The case of Tara Lynn Grant. Tara Lynn Grant was born on June 22, 1972 in Michigan. She grew up on a farm with her parents and older sister. During her childhood, Tara enjoyed doing outdoor activities such as horseback riding and helping her family take care of farm animals. She was also very active in school sports, cheerleading, playing basketball, and playing music in the school band. After completing high school, Tara decided to attend the University of Michigan. It was here that she met her boyfriend Stephen and married him after graduating. Tara, after graduating, got a good job at a large international company. Meanwhile, Stephen had been involved in politics as an assistant to a state senator. However, when the senator retired, Stephen lost his job. Therefore, he decided to work at his father's small tool shop. After 4 years of marriage, Tara and Stephen had a daughter, followed by a son a few years later. When their second child was born, they bought a new home in Monmouth County, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. Tara was successful in her career, but due to the nature of her work, she often traveled to different states and countries, leaving her with only weekends to spend with her family. As a result, Stephen had to take on most of the responsibility for the children. His father's store job and the children's care were difficult for him. So they decided to hire a full-time nanny to help ease the burden. After a short time, they found the right person. They hired a young German woman who quickly bonded with their children and took on most of the childcare. Because of her work, Tara only came home on weekends, which led to more frequent arguments between them. Tara expected that after her next promotion, she would be able to adjust her schedule to spend more time at home with her family, but when she was promoted, she traveled for work almost every day. This continued until February 14, 2007, when something unexpected happened. On Valentine's Day, Stephen reported to the police that Tara had been out of contact for 5 days. This was unusual because Tara was in constant contact with her family, especially when children were involved. Stephen recounted the incident as follows. On the evening of February 9th, Tara returned home from a business trip and said she had to leave earlier than expected, staying home for only 1 day. This led to an argument, and Tara began packing her things. As she left the house, she told the driver of a dark-colored car, "I'll be waiting down the street." From then on, Tara was out of contact and did not return any calls. The police wondered why Stephen waited 5 days to report the incident. Stephen explained that he was not worried at first because he thought Tara had just left for work early as planned and had not contacted her because they had just had an argument. However, he became concerned when Tara did not contact her family for an extended period of time. Normally, when she was on a business trip, she would call her 2 young children, but this time she did not contact them. Furthermore, Tara's boss called Stephen on Monday to say that she had not shown up for a meeting. This made him even more worried, and he was sure that Tara was missing. Stephen called Tara's parents and told them about her lack of contact with home. However, the parents thought that Tara just needed time off after an argument with Stephen. Previously, Tara had told her parents that her relationship with Stephen was having difficulties due to work, and they argued frequently. Therefore, her relatives thought that Tara just wanted to temporarily leave and would return home when she had stabilized. As time passed and Tara still did not appear, and she did not answer any calls, Stephen began to worry about her safety. He decided to contact the police for help. During the interrogation, the police noticed some suspicious scratches on Stephen. They asked if the scratches were related to the argument with Tara, but Stephen denied it. He explained that he often got injured while working at his father's store. After the interview, the police said they needed to search Stephen's home, and he agreed. When they arrived, the police discovered that all of Tara's belongings were missing from the home, including her papers and wallet, along with her suitcase. Stephen also gave them access to Tara's personal computer. The police checked it and found that there had been no bank transactions in the days after she disappeared. The police were surprised because Tara would have needed to pay for expenses if she had gone somewhere, such as buying a plane ticket or booking a hotel room. During the search of the home, the police found no signs of Tara's whereabouts after she disappeared. There was no evidence or clues. Therefore, the police decided to focus on determining what she had been doing and where she had been on February 9th. The area they live in is considered one of the safest in the country, and the local police department has little experience investigating similar disappearances. The police ask Stephen to take a lie detector test, but he refuses. Stephen insists that he would never harm his wife and becomes very emotional. The police then leave his home and consider their next steps. However, the next morning, Stephen contacts the police again and says he is willing to cooperate. However, a short time later, Stephen's lawyer contacts the police and says he has advised his agent not to cooperate with the police. Other than following the usual practice in such cases, they are unable to find any other leads. During the investigation, Tara's family, friends, and colleagues said they had not heard from her since February 9th and did not know where she might be. Additionally, her bank account had not recorded any significant transactions, although she needed to make some basic purchases. Police began to question Stephen and discovered that his driver's license had been revoked. However, Stephen continued to drive despite the ban. Police used this to arrest Stephen for driving without a license. After his arrest, Stephen claimed that the police were considering him a prime suspect in his wife's disappearance and refused to answer any questions. With the assistance of his lawyer, Stephen was released on bail and returned home. Police continued to investigate and requested Tara's cell phone records to gather more evidence. On the day Tara went missing, she made one last call. It was from the airport, in which she told Stephen that she would be home soon. Stephen then called her repeatedly, but all the calls went to voicemail. The police listened to these recordings and found that Stephen asked Tara to answer or call back. He claimed that Tara did not care about the children and asked her to come home for the children. However, Tara's cell phone was turned off and was last connected to a cell tower near her home on the evening of her disappearance. It is worth noting that the police did not find any incoming calls to Tara at that time, although Stephen said that someone had called her before she left the house and said that the person would be waiting for her on the street. Stephen was really worried about his wife and at the same time angry at Tara's actions of abandoning their children. Although the police were investigating him, they could not find any new traces. Stephen still refused to cooperate with the police, accusing them of wasting time suspecting him instead of looking for Tara. During this time, Stephen actively appeared in the media. Tara's mysterious disappearance attracted a lot of attention from many people, and in front of the camera, Stephen begged her to return home safely. When the company that Stephen and Tara hired the nanny learned about the case, they decided to send the nanny back to Germany. Before leaving, the nanny reported to the police about her working hours at their house. The nanny said that on the evening Tara came home, she went to a bar with her friends. When the nanny returned home, she met Stephen, who seemed sad and said that Tara had just left home. Although Stephen refused to cooperate with the police, he hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent, to investigate the case. However, this investigator also failed to find Tara. The police decided to change their approach and contacted the nanny agency that employed Tara and Stephen. They discovered an important piece of information. Before hiring the German nanny, they had a total of 6 other nannies, but none of them had worked there long term. Police interviewed the nannies, most of whom said Stephen behaved strangely and unnervingly. They said he would rummage through their belongings, ask personal questions, and verbally abuse them. The police began investigating why the last nanny from Germany had a completely different description of her time with the family. They had only heard good things about Stephen. To clarify the matter, the police monitored the nanny's emails and phone calls. This led to an unexpected piece of information. The police discovered text messages between her and Stephen, which showed that they had been in a relationship. It was learned that the 19-year-old had been having an affair with him during Tara's business trips and that the relationship continued until she quit her job and had to leave the country. Although this was an important clue, the police could not yet conclude that Stephen was involved in Tara's disappearance. Therefore, they continued to look for other evidence. During the investigation, the police talked to Tara's relatives and friends and found that most of them did not like Stephen because of his strange behavior. They believed that Stephen wanted to control Tara's every move and often caused conflicts with her family. The police also found another important piece of information. Stephen's ex-girlfriend, whom he had dated before meeting Tara, contacted the police and revealed something surprising. According to her, Stephen contacted her again a few months ago, and their conversations gradually became intimate. Eventually, Stephen expressed his desire to start a romantic relationship with her, even though they were both married to other people. Stephen also complained about Tara and her frequent absences. He suspected that she was cheating on him with her boss. To verify this, he installed tracking software on her computer, allowing him to read her messages, but he found no evidence of Tara's infidelity. This information made the police even more suspicious of her husband's involvement in Tara's disappearance. However, the police still needed more evidence. Since it had been several weeks since Tara went missing, they began to consider the possibility that she was no longer alive and began an extensive search for her body. Police, along with volunteers, began searching the area around Tara's house and a large park nearby for several miles. However, the search lasted for several days and still yielded no results. But everything changed on February 28th. A woman walking in the park discovered something strange under a tree along the path. A plastic bag was covered with branches and snow, but it was clear that there was still something inside. Therefore, she decided to examine the bag closely. When she looked into the bag, she discovered rubber gloves and metal fragments along with a dark red substance at the bottom of the bag. She called the police to report the incident, and she decided to keep the bag and turn it in to the police. Police suspected the dark red substance could be blood, so they sent the bag to a lab for testing. However, due to the large workload, experts said the DNA analysis could take up to 2 months. In the meantime, experts have tested the bag and confirmed that the dark red substance is indeed human blood. The police focused all their efforts on the area where the bag was found, mobilizing all resources to investigate. Meanwhile, Stephen did not participate in the search. Instead, Stephen spent his time giving an interview to a news channel, giving many suspicious answers. Stephen repeatedly criticized Tara for being away from home so often. He called her a bad mother and claimed that he shouldered most of the responsibility for taking care of the children. When the reporter asked about their financial situation and whether he was living off Tara's money, Stephen became angry. He insisted that he did not need a single penny from Tara. During the interview, Stephen accused Tara of having an affair but did not provide any evidence. He repeatedly criticized Tara. The police obtained a search warrant for Tara and Stephen's home. The police arrived at Stephen's home. At the same time, Stephen returned from an interview with a reporter. The police informed him of the search warrant for his home. Stephen opened the door for them and then called his lawyer. The lawyer asked the police if Stephen was under arrest. The police replied that he was not. Stephen then said that he was going to walk his dog and left. During that time, the police searched each room in the house. They eventually arrived at the garage and found a large green bin containing several plastic bags. When they opened one of the plastic bags, they found an unknown substance and women's clothing. When the police opened the other bag, they discovered that it contained human remains. After examining a total of 5 bags in the bin, the police quickly confirmed that they contained the remains of a woman. Police believed they had found Tara's body and suspected Stephen of being her killer. However, Stephen did not appear, so the police immediately launched a search for him to prevent him from fleeing or causing harm to others. Meanwhile, the police requested reinforcements to search the park for Tara's remains as more remains were still missing from the garage. Over 100 police officers from neighboring counties were called in to assist in the search, and their efforts soon paid off. A few hundred meters from where the bag was found, the police found another body part. Then they found the head. Due to the cold weather, the rest of the body was quite well preserved, helping the police confirm that it was Tara. The police continued to search and found some more body parts. However, in the evening, the search had to be stopped until the next morning. During this time, the police also tried to locate Stephen but were unsuccessful. They contacted his friends, and one of them revealed that Stephen had called him, informing him that the police were searching at Stephen's house and asking to pick him up on the way. Stephen's friend came to pick him up and took him home. On the way, he noticed that Stephen's behavior was very strange. He seemed scared, his hands were shaking, and he seemed very depressed. When Stephen arrived at his friend's house, Stephen said he wanted to see his children and borrowed a car from his friend. However, Stephen's children were at his sister's house in another state at the time. The friend agreed to lend him the pickup truck, and Stephen left. In order to track Stephen, the police requested his phone and credit card information. This helped them quickly determine Stephen's travel route. By monitoring his withdrawals and calls to his sister, the police realized that Stephen was on his way to see his children. Realizing this, the police immediately set out to track him. An unexpected event occurred. The police received a call from a German woman with whom Stephen had a relationship. The woman said that Stephen had just contacted her and confessed to killing his wife, Tara. According to him, they had argued that night and he became violent after Tara slapped him. In a fit of rage, Stephen pushed Tara and she fell to the floor, resulting in her death from head injuries. After this confession, the police no longer had any doubts about Stephen's guilt. However, they still needed to catch him. For hours, they searched the area along the highway leading to the neighboring state. They eventually found Stephen's car near the entrance to the national park, but he himself was nowhere to be found. The police searched the area, and after several hours of searching, they found Stephen using a thermal imaging camera. He was lying under a tree, wearing light clothing and in a dangerous state of hypothermia. The officers noticed that he was suffering from an unusual condition, often talking to trees and mumbling incomprehensible sentences. Fearing that he was in danger, the officers quickly airlifted him to the hospital. At that time, his body temperature was only 88 degrees Fahrenheit, but doctors were able to save him. However, he needed time to fully recover. While Stephen was in the hospital, he was charged with murder and the case was transferred to court. Interestingly, on the same day, Stephen's attorney refused to defend him. When asked why, Stephen's attorney gave a vague answer. A new attorney was then appointed for Stephen. Meanwhile, forensic pathologists began investigating Tara's remains. One of the most experienced pathologists in the country, who had worked on such high-profile cases as the JFK case and the JonBenet Ramsey case, was appointed as the chief medical examiner. After examining Tara's remains, the chief medical examiner concluded that Stephen's story did not match the facts. According to Stephen, Tara died of head trauma, but the investigation actually showed that Tara's cause of death was strangulation. When Stephen recovered, the police came to the hospital to see him and he told them what happened that night. The incident started when Tara returned and said she had to leave a day early. This led to a heated argument between the two. In a fit of rage, Stephen attacked Tara. She tried to leave, but he held her back. Tara defended herself by punching Stephen in the face, which angered him and he attacked her. The incident escalated when Stephen yelled at and strangled Tara. He then dragged her body down the second floor to the garage and put her in the trunk of his car. Meanwhile, the nanny returned home. To cover up his crime, Stephen told her that Tara had left him. The next day, he took the body to his father's workshop while making sure no one else was there. To cover his tracks, Stephen destroyed all of Tara's documents and personal belongings, then used a saw to cut her body into pieces. A few hours later, he packed the remains into plastic bags, placed them in a container, and returned home, leaving the body in his car for several days. He pondered how to dispose of the remains while creating an alibi for himself. He repeatedly called Tara and left messages on her voicemail, begging her to come home. Stephen took his son's sled and went to the park. There, he placed the container containing Tara's remains on the sled and began pulling it up a hill to avoid the crowded area. However, the rope he was pulling the sled with was not secure, and it slipped out of his hands. The sled began to roll down, the container tipped over, and the bags containing the remains spilled out. After picking up the bags, Stephen put the container back on the sled, and after a while, he found a remote place to bury the bags under the snow. He then left the park. A few days after he left, the police began looking for Tara, and the detectives announced that they would begin a search in the area of the park where Stephen had buried the bags. Stephen became panicked, remembering that the largest bag had been poorly hidden and could soon be discovered. To avoid this, he decided to move the bags to a safer place. Stephen went to the park, picked up a few bags, shouldered them, and carried them to his father's workshop, placing them on the roof. The next day, before going to the interview, he took the box from home, went to the workshop to carry the bags back to his garage. However, the next day, the police obtained a search warrant for the house. There, they found the bags in the box. When the situation became clear, Stephen confessed that he had not originally planned to surrender. During his conversation with the police, Stephen showed no remorse for his crimes. Instead, he often smiled and joked even as he described the process of hiding and disposing of the body. While Stephen awaited trial in prison, his children continued to live with his sister. This did not please Tara's family. Despite this, Stephen's sister continued to keep in touch with him, even feeling sorry for him and responding to jokes about Tara's murder. Tara's family eventually won custody of the children, but Stephen's family was still allowed to see them. In November 2007, Stephen's trial began. However, he did not deny his guilt. His new attorney then tried to get Stephen to get a reduced sentence. The attorney explained that Stephen and Tara's troubled marriage and Tara's frequent absences were the main reasons for Stephen's crime. During the trial, Stephen had lied about Tara's plans to come home a day earlier. Tara's sister, who had spoken to her before the murder, also confirmed this information. During that conversation, Tara told her sister that she would be home soon after that, as she did every week. There was no evidence that Tara had lied to her husband. Tara's boss said that Tara's relationship with the man was purely business, which was confirmed by their emails and text messages. The prosecution failed to prove that Stephen had planned the murder in advance. He had clearly committed the crime in a fit of rage, which could have resulted in a second-degree murder charge instead of a first-degree one. On December 21, 2007, the jury unanimously found Stephen guilty and he was sentenced to a minimum of 50 years in prison. Stephen's attorney attempted to appeal the verdict, but to no avail. He has since served time behind bars. But his story didn't end there. Tara's murder captured the attention of millions across the country, and Stephen clearly enjoyed it. While in prison, he began writing a book and begged to have it published with the help of his sister. They even discussed the possibility of turning it into a movie, and Stephen considered which famous actor could play him. In 2008, something else came to light. Stephen's children told their aunt that they had actually seen their father kill their mother that evening. They came out of the room after hearing screams and witnessed the whole thing. When this information appeared in the media, Stephen's relatives accused the children of lying and continued to protect him. That same year, it was revealed that Stephen's father, unlike other relatives, did not support him, could not live with what his son had done, and Stephen's father's body was found in his home. To this day, Stephen remains behind bars and will only be eligible for parole in 2058. The case of Christina and Thompson Harris. Christina and Thompson and Jason Thomas Harris, both 40, had been married for 11 years by 2014. They got married in 2003, after dating for about 5 years. In 2009, Christina and Jason welcomed their first child, which brought significant changes to their lives. Despite the daily challenges and responsibilities, they were happy to be parents. Christina took care of the house and the children, while Jason worked at a plastics factory. As the children grew up, Christina was able to contribute financially to the family by working. However, in May 2014, she had to take maternity leave because she was expecting their second child in a few weeks. On September 29, 2014, Jason chatted with Christina while at work. Christina was suffering from a cold. She had a bad cough and was not sleeping well, but she reassured her husband that she was fine. A few hours later, Jason called his wife at home but received no response, which worried him. Unable to reach Christina, Jason asked a neighbor to check on her. He explained that Christina was sick and not answering the phone. The neighbor knocked on the front door but got no answer, so she called Christina's name. Receiving no response, she decided to try the door, found it unlocked, and entered the house. When she entered the bedroom, she found Christina lying on the bed and could not wake her. The neighbor called 911 and ran out of the house to call another neighbor, a nurse. The nurse checked Christina's pulse and confirmed that she had died. Thus, on September 29, 2014, 4 months after the birth of her second child, Christina was found dead at home. When the police arrived, Jason Harris was present. He told the police and paramedics that his wife had been sick but was alive when he left for work that morning. 2 days later, the medical examiner ruled that Christina died from an overdose of a controlled substance, a finding that shocked her family and friends. Most people who knew Christina, a mother of 2, including a newborn, believed that she had never used drugs. Christina's mother, Kathy, told police that her daughter was fine when she saw her the day before she died. Police were therefore skeptical of Jason Harris's claim that his wife had a cold. According to Kathy, Christina said her marriage to Jason was complicated. Jason was unhappy with the marriage but did not want a divorce because of concerns about child support and custody. Neighbors who discovered Christina's body also provided additional information to the police. Jason reportedly told them that the night before Christina died, he had prepared cereal with milk for her, then Christina passed out and dropped the plate. Police realized that Christina's family and friends had a hard time accepting that she might be involved in drugs. Instead, police suspected that Jason Harris was involved in Christina's death. Christina's mother and sisters insisted that police test her breast milk. According to Kathy, the police ignored the request for 48 hours. However, thanks to the family's persistence, the police finally agreed to investigate. As a result, breast milk was used as evidence for the first time in Michigan history. As confirmed by Christina's family and friends, all drug tests at her workplace and at the hospital where she gave birth to her second child were negative. Her second child was only 4 months old when Christina died. Christina was breastfeeding, and Kathy confirmed that Christina was very careful about what she put into her body because she didn't want to affect her child. Christina often pumped breast milk while at work and stored it in the freezer. Some of the breast milk was left at Kathy's mother's house. They tested 3 bags of breast milk for possible drug residue. These bags were labeled with the date they were put in the freezer, so Christina knew which bag to thaw first. Experts tested all the samples, including the ones frozen just before Christina died, and found no signs of drugs. This proves that Christina did not use the substance that killed her. Jason Harris's sister was the only one who suggested that Christina had used drugs, prompting investigators to focus more on Jason and treat Christina's death as a homicide. The investigation was slow, and it is unclear what would have happened if Christina's family had not been actively involved in the search for the truth. Kathy repeatedly reminded Davison police about her daughter's case in August 2016, nearly 2 years after Christina's death. Not seeing the enthusiasm and desire to solve her daughter's case in Davison, Kathy asked Davison police to turn the case over to the Michigan State Police, which had new investigators. From there, the story began to unravel. Police gathered a lot of information about Jason Harris, including how he acted before and after his wife's death. Jason had been having affairs with other women. Christina knew about this and confided in her family and co-workers that Jason had been texting other people while she was giving birth to their youngest child. Christina once told a co-worker that if she died, Jason would be the cause. When asked if she was serious, she said yes. Jason told his co-worker that he suspected the second child was not his biological child. He also complained that after the birth, Christina became depressed, often stayed in bed, and did not go to work. Jason often complained about Christina nagging him. A co-worker of Jason recalled that Jason may have told him that he wanted Christina dead. He described the relationship between Jason and Christina as toxic and recalled that they argued frequently. One of the most surprising and shocking things about this case is that Jason Harris did not hesitate to let everyone know that he wanted to get rid of his wife. He tried to do so, but unfortunately, no one paid attention to his words and actions before Christina died. Jason bought poison twice and mixed it into her drink. Both times, Christina felt that the taste was unusual and did not drink it. Jason then asked a co-worker to find him a poison that would not change the taste or smell of drinks or food. Jason said he wanted to knock Christina unconscious so she would not feel anything. When he shared with the co-worker that Christina would not drink water because it tasted strange, the co-worker refused to talk to him further. The co-worker testified that Jason had talked about wanting Christina to stop nagging and that the co-worker thought Jason was joking. Jason also told a co-worker that he had hired someone to kill Christina, but the person was arrested for another reason before the murder. Jason therefore offered the co-worker $10,000 from Christina's $100,000 life insurance policy to kill her. The co-worker refused the offer, thinking that Jason was just venting his anger by talking about his wife and making inappropriate jokes. According to the colleague, he recalled a conversation with Jason in which Jason said, "I'm bored with her. I'm going to dump her." The police then decided to question the neighbor who discovered Christina's body. The neighbor testified that she saw Christina's family truck in the driveway. But Christina did not come to the door. She entered the house and found Christina lying in bed, unresponsive. The neighbor asked Jason if she should try to wake her up. He replied that Christina must have fallen asleep and that he would come home. The neighbor went back inside and removed the covers around Christina because she felt cold and had foam coming from her mouth and nose. The neighbor called 911 and another neighbor who was a registered nurse. The neighbor, who was a registered nurse, testified that Christina was cold, stiff, had no pulse, and had white foam coming from her mouth. She did not attempt to resuscitate Christina because she believed she was already dead. Jason told the police that he asked a neighbor to check on Christina and that he had to rush home because Christina was unresponsive. However, witnesses said Jason did not appear anxious or in a hurry. What raised suspicions about Jason was that morning, he called Christina's supervisor at work. He told her that Christina had died the night before and that he wanted to inquire about the $100,000 death benefit from Christina's life insurance policy through work. Additionally, one of the women Jason had an intimate relationship with told investigators that Jason had contacted her on the day of Christina's death and said that his wife had died from an overdose of a controlled substance. This suggests that he knew what caused Christina's death even before the medical examiner's report. That evening, the neighbor he had asked to check on Christina saw him in his driveway. She said that Jason told her that Christina was not the angel her parents thought she was and that their child would soon learn all the good and bad things about Christina. He said that Christina dropped her bowl of cereal and he told her to go to bed. Jason also told a neighbor that his wife tossed and turned during the night and that he heard her coughing before he left for work. Jason wondered if that was her last breath. Jason told a police officer that Christina was coughing a lot when he left the house. He also told the police that Christina fell asleep eating cereal the night before she died. Finally, Jason told Christina's mother, Kathy, that before she died, Christina complained that her water tasted like chemicals. One of the main motives in this case is believed to be insurance money. Within a week of Christina's death, Jason and his mother went to Christina's workplace to inquire about the life insurance money. Additionally, Jason received a $20,000 death benefit from a life insurance policy issued by his company shortly after Christina's death. One of Jason's lovers moved in with Jason and his children. Christina's mother believed that Jason's lover moved in with him after Christina's funeral. However, Jason's neighbor testified that the lover had even moved into Jason's home before Christina's funeral. The neighbor added that Jason's adult children from a previous marriage moved into the home within days of Christina's death. Police also discovered that Jason Harris purchased a plane ticket to Rhode Island 9 days after Christina's death to visit a woman with whom he had exchanged more than 5,800 text messages. County Medical Examiner Dr. Brian Hunter submitted post-mortem blood and urine samples for laboratory testing. Dr. Hunter determined that the test results were consistent with Christina being poisoned by a lethal substance. Initially, Dr. Hunter determined that her death was an accident. Because there were no injection marks on Christina's body and investigators did not find any powder residue or rolling papers next to the bed where Christina died. In 2016, the Michigan State Police took over the investigation into Christina's death. In 2019, after Christina's family disputed Christina's cause of death, Dr. Hunter later changed Christina's death certificate from an accident to a homicide. Police charged Jason with first-degree murder, solicitation of murder, and delivery of a controlled substance resulting in death. He was denied bail. Jason's attorney, Nicholas Robinson, said his client pleaded not guilty to the charges and wanted to fight them. When he was arrested, Jason had lost his job after testing positive for drugs. Kathy's efforts to ensure that law enforcement would punish the person responsible for her daughter's death were not overlooked. Gena's County Prosecutor David Layton said that a few years ago, he began receiving Facebook messages and emails from a Davidson woman who claimed her daughter had died and that her death was not an accident. "It can't be happening," the woman told the prosecutor. She was certain that someone had caused her daughter's death. Kathy's passionate pleas caught David Layton's attention, prompting authorities to re-examine the death of her daughter, Christina. "I will never forget what she wrote in an email, Prosecutor, you are my last hope. This is our last chance to get justice for my daughter. Please help me," David Layton said. "At that moment and as I spoke to her this morning, I was absolutely convinced that her daughter's death was not an accident. It was the result of foul play. It was Kathy's relentless efforts to seek justice for her daughter's death that led to this situation. And those efforts paid off." The trial began in 2020. The prosecution alleged that Jason put a controlled substance in his wife's cereal bowl to kill her. He then went to work as usual, waited a few hours, and asked a neighbor to check on Christina. According to the prosecution, Jason wanted someone else to discover his wife's body in order to reduce suspicion against him. The direct evidence against Jason was overwhelming. Jason had a motive for killing Christina. He was having an affair with another woman, suspected she was cheating on him, believed the second child was not his, and was tired of her nagging. Jason did not want a divorce because he did not want to pay child support or lose custody of her. Before her death, Jason told a coworker that he wanted Christina dead. On the morning of her death, Jason called her company to inquire about a $100,000 life insurance policy, and in that call, he said Christina had died the night before. The jury heard clear evidence that Jason not only wanted Christina dead, but that he had tried to hire someone to kill her. He planned to do this and knew where to buy illegal drugs. In fact, he had purchased them on multiple occasions to give to Christina. At trial, multiple witnesses testified that Christina did not use drugs recreationally. Christina was very careful about what she consumed because she was breastfeeding. Furthermore, tests showed that her frozen breast milk contained no harmful substances. To support the theory that Jason had poisoned Christina's food, the prosecution presented toxicology reports. For example, Dr. Judge argued that Christina's death could have been caused by ingestion of some kind of poison. The prosecution ruled out injection because no traces of injection or needles were found at the scene. Dr. Judge also testified that inhalation was unlikely because no rolled-up dollar bills or snorting paper were found at the scene. The court gave Jason Harris a chance to speak, but he did not apologize or show remorse. Instead, he insisted that he was innocent. The judge said, "The jury did not believe your lies," ultimately exposing him as a selfish and deceitful murderer. On November 17, 2021, the jury found Jason Harris, 47, guilty on all charges. 3 weeks later, the court sentenced him to life in prison without parole. He has appealed the verdict, however. After the trial, prosecutor David Layton expressed his condolences to Christina's family and friends, emphasizing that this was a tragic case. Layton went on to say, "While this case has many unique and media-driven details, the most important thing is the family's loss. I hope this verdict helps them find comfort in knowing that justice has been served." Jason requested a new trial on the grounds that his defense attorney did not do a good job. He introduced evidence in the form of his attorney's testimony, showing that his defense attorney failed to seek an independent expert opinion on the prosecution's evidence and failed to consult with an independent toxicologist. Jason's defense attorney explained this decision as part of a trial strategy because he had thoroughly questioned Dr. Hunter and was able to show the jury that Dr. Hunter had changed his opinion about the cause of death based on information from a related civil lawsuit. In February 2024, the Michigan Court of Appeals upheld Jason Harris's conviction. He remains in prison for life without the possibility of parole. The case of Kathy Martin. Kathy Martin was born on October 25, 1959, in Houston, Texas. Kathy grew up in a peaceful and happy family. During her childhood, she was very close to her older sister. When she was a teenager, Kathy met Mike Odom, whom she would later marry and start a family. After the wedding, the two settled in a quiet suburb outside of Houston, and soon after, they had a daughter and a son. After the birth of their second child, Kathy stayed home and took care of the children. Meanwhile, Mike worked at her father's small sign factory. Thanks to the financial support of Kathy's parents, the family was able to provide for their children. Therefore, Kathy was able to take care of the children without having to worry about working extra. On March 3, 1987, Kathy stayed home to take care of the children as usual. Mike went to work and then met up with friends at a bar after work. He called Kathy from a pay phone, but she didn't answer. This worried Mike because Kathy rarely left the house. He called several times but got no response. Worried about his wife, Mike called their neighbor, Tim Robinson, and asked him to check on her. Tim went to the house and knocked on the door, but no one answered. He looked through the living room window and saw that the television was still on. So he knocked again but got no response. At this point, he began to worry that something serious might have happened to Kathy. Instead of going home to call Mike or the police, he decided to drive around town looking for police patrols. After a few minutes of searching, he spotted a police car and explained the situation. He asked them to check on Kathy to see if she was okay. When the police arrived at the house, they also got no response to their knocking. They decided to try the door and found it unlocked. Once inside, the police found Kathy's older daughter lying unconscious on the sofa, clearly traumatized but still alive. The police quickly called an ambulance and continued to check other rooms in the house. In the bedroom, they found the younger child lying in her crib, safe and sound. But when they entered another room, they discovered a horrific scene. Kathy was lying on the floor, covered in blood and naked. The police immediately determined that she was dead. Her arms were also tied with a light cord. Paramedics took Kathy's daughter to the hospital and began investigating the crime scene. Kathy's father arrived at the house, but the police did not reveal any specific details. Instead, they asked him to go to the hospital to care for his granddaughter when she woke up. While waiting at the hospital, he learned of his daughter's death from a news report on TV. When Mike arrived at the house, the police quickly discovered something strange. He arrived late and had blood-like stains on his shirt. The police asked him to hand over his clothes and answer questions. During this time, the police discovered some interesting signs. They found several blood stains in the bathroom, indicating that the attacker had tried to hide the evidence after the crime. This suggested that the attacker had been in the house for some time to clean up. Forensic experts also discovered some important clues. There were no signs of forced entry, and all the windows and doors except the front door were locked. This suggested that Kathy had invited the attacker into the house or that the attacker had a key. Police speculated that the attacker may have threatened to harm Kathy's children if she screamed or resisted. Therefore, Kathy may have complied with the attacker's demands, hoping to be spared, but was ultimately murdered. As doctors worked to save Kathy's daughter, they discovered that she had been brutally beaten, most likely with her bare hands. She spent several hours in critical condition at the hospital, and her chances of survival were still very low. After examining Kathy's body, medical experts determined that she had suffered severe injuries with 16 stab wounds, most of which were concentrated in the abdomen. They also discovered that she had been sexually assaulted and collected biological samples of the offender from the scene. However, at that time, DNA analysis methods were not widely used in forensic science. Therefore, experts were unable to extract DNA profiles from biological samples. They were only able to determine the killer's blood type, so the sample was sent to the lab for further analysis. The police had noticed suspicious stains on his shirt early in the investigation and had kept the clothes for examination. His behavior that evening was very suspicious. He had gone out with friends after work, but instead of going home when he couldn't reach his wife, he asked a neighbor to check on him. The police had seen similar cases before, where a husband killed his wife and created an alibi by going out with friends. He would then ask someone else to check on his wife to avoid being the first to discover the body and throwing the police off the trail. The police expanded their investigation to see if Mike might have planned the murder before meeting his friends. They also discovered that Mike had a criminal record. After graduating from high school, he was arrested for selling drugs to an undercover police officer. Mike was sentenced to 6 years in prison but only served 2 years before being paroled. He later married Kathy. Although Mike had a criminal record, the police needed more evidence to charge him. The police also began investigating Mike's neighbor, Tim, because of signs of suspicion. Tim drove around town looking for patrol officers instead of calling the police. The police checked Tim's car and found suspicious blood-like stains on the carpet. They sent these samples to the lab for analysis. Now investigators wondered if Mike and Tim might have worked together to commit the crime. After completing the report, the medical examiner came to an important conclusion. Kathy's time of death was around 1 p.m. before she was discovered around 6 p.m. The police expanded their investigation to determine the suspects' whereabouts around that time and to find out what they did after the murder. Mike and Tim both claimed to be at work at the time. So the police set out to see if their statements were accurate. 2 days after the murder, they received a call from the hospital saying Kathy's daughter had woken up. The police went to see her in the hope that she would provide important information about what had happened. However, they encountered a major obstacle. The 4-year-old girl's memory was almost completely erased. She only remembered a light-haired man entering the house, while Mike and Tim had dark hair. But the police did not rule them out as suspects. They believed that the severe trauma could have made her memory inaccurate. The police received a call from the lab with surprising information. Experts examined the evidence and found that the stain on Tim's car carpet was motor oil, and the stain on Mike's shirt was just paint, not evidence of a crime. In addition, many of Mike and Tim's co-workers also confirmed that they had been at work all day and did not leave until the evening. Thus, they had no opportunity to go to Kathy's house and commit the crime. The police requested a lie detector test, and the results showed that neither of them were lying. There was no conclusive evidence. The police had to review the entire case and investigate other suspects who might be familiar to Kathy's family, because the attacker could have easily entered Kathy's house. During the investigation, they had conversations with Kathy's relatives and friends to find out who they thought might have committed the crime. Many of them immediately named the same person, Greg. Greg was Kathy's brother-in-law, and her loved ones revealed that she often complained about his behavior. Specifically, according to Kathy, Greg openly flirted with her and repeatedly tried to convince her to have sex with him. Kathy also said that Greg often made inappropriate comments about her appearance, especially about her abdomen. And according to the evidence collected, we know that most of the injuries were on Kathy's abdomen. The police also knew that Greg had a history of illegal drug use and a criminal record. Therefore, the police began to suspect him and soon found some important clues. They found Greg's fingerprints matched one in Kathy's house, as well as a hair that matched his. However, it should be noted that Greg often visited Kathy's family, so it is possible that the fingerprints and hair were in the house before the murder occurred. Kathy's parents also believed that he was the one who killed their daughter. Kathy's mother specifically remembered one time when Greg visited Kathy's daughter at the hospital. When she saw Greg, she had a clear look of fear on her face. These observations suggested that she was afraid of him. However, when asked, she could not remember what happened on the day of the murder. After hearing all this information, the police summoned Greg for questioning. However, he denied any involvement in the murder and said that he was with a friend at the time. During the questioning, Greg asked to go to the parking lot because he was afraid of being fined for expired parking. However, he did not return to the police station. Greg's wife, Kathy's sister, said that on the day of the murder, Greg dropped her off at around 10:30 a.m. and picked her up at 2:30 p.m. This meant that Greg had a 4-hour window around the time of the murder, enough time for him to commit the crime. However, the police still did not find enough evidence to prove Greg's involvement in the murder. In a last-ditch effort to find more clues, the police decided to analyze a semen sample taken from Kathy's body. However, at that time, the technology only allowed for the blood type of the owner of the semen sample to be determined. In addition, the analysis of the samples collected from the case was too small to be tested. However, the police still decided to perform the test. The results showed that the blood type of the owner of the semen sample matched Greg's blood type, but this was not enough to conclude that he was guilty. As a result, the police were unable to arrest him. They continued to search for more evidence, but were unable to prove that Greg was involved in the case. Kathy's family believed that Greg was the killer. Kathy's sister Shelley still did not believe that her husband was involved in the case and continued to live with him. In the years that followed, the police continued to revisit the case, hoping to find any new clues. In 1998, 11 years after Kathy was murdered, they requested a DNA analysis on the remaining semen sample. However, experts were only able to extract a partial DNA profile, which, when compared to Greg's DNA, showed that Greg was among the 2% of the population who could match the profile. He could not be arrested based on this result. The police again called Greg in for questioning, telling him that the semen from Kathy's body matched his DNA. Greg then changed his original statement, saying that Kathy had been romantically involved with him and that he had actually visited her on the day of the murder, but Greg insisted that she was still alive when he left. The police were suspicious of Greg's sudden change in story because suspects often change their stories when they hear about DNA evidence. In addition, Kathy had complained about Greg's flirtations, feeling uncomfortable around him. So it was unlikely that she would have had a secret relationship with him. But the police knew that they could not convict without a perfect DNA match. The local police reviewed the case and confirmed that a guilty verdict was almost impossible, and the case was put on hold again for many years. In 2002, the police reopened the case and asked for help from forensic scientist Catherine Long. At the time, Catherine was doing groundbreaking DNA research. She and her colleagues wanted to know if the offender's DNA might still be on Kathy's body after the strangulation, and if they could extract the DNA for analysis. To test this, Catherine and her team conducted a simulation experiment. They followed the steps the perpetrators took by briefly strangling each other, then taking samples from their hands and necks for analysis. The results showed that even in such a short interaction, there were still enough skin cells to extract and analyze DNA. The police began to focus on the available evidence when they were unable to re-examine her body. They decided to thoroughly examine all the items related to the case to see if the perpetrator had come into contact with them. They quickly noticed the string of lights that the killer had used to tie Kathy's hands, which the police gave to Catherine and her colleagues to examine. As they began their work, they noticed that the string had been stored in a paper bag. This was important because the paper bag allowed air to circulate, preventing moisture buildup and protecting the biological samples. Experts used cotton swabs to collect biological samples from the entire length of the rope. They paid special attention to areas on the rope that still had traces of Kathy's blood. After analysis, they discovered 2 DNA profiles. The first profile, belonging to the victim Kathy, the second profile completely matched Greg's DNA sample. The police finally had evidence that Greg was the one who tied Kathy's hands, and that he was the killer. 15 years after Kathy's death, the perpetrator was finally arrested. During questioning, Greg did not confess, insisting that he had a romantic relationship with Kathy. The police did not believe him. While awaiting trial, Greg was detained. A cellmate of Greg's contacted the police and said that Greg had confessed to him. According to the friend, Greg told them the details of the attack and murder. Greg said that one day, he had been using illegal drugs and went to Kathy's house. Once inside, Greg tried to force Kathy to have sex, but she refused and asked him to leave. However, Greg became aggressive and attacked Kathy's daughter, causing many serious injuries. Greg assured Kathy that if she did not comply with his wishes, he would kill her. Kathy had no choice but to agree to protect her children. Greg then tied her up, attacked her, and killed her with many injuries. To cover up the crime, Greg washed the blood off himself in the bathroom and changed into Kathy's husband's clothes before leaving the school. The police forced Greg to face the truth. This time, Greg confessed to killing Kathy. In 2004, he pleaded guilty in court and was sentenced to 45 years in prison. However, he only served 4 years before dying at the age of 56 of liver cancer. Kathy's husband, Mike, died at the age of 45. For 15 years, Kathy's family, including her parents and children, waited patiently, trusting that the police would find the killer. Although they believed Greg was the killer, they saw him continue to live with their second daughter, but there was nothing they could do. The case of April Tinsley. April Tinsley was born on March 18, 1980, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, the oldest child in her family. She attended elementary school and was a member of the children's choir at her local church. April enjoyed playing with her friends around the neighborhood. On Friday, April 1, 1988, when she turned 8, April came home from school, eager to play. After lunch, she asked her mother if she could visit her friend Nicole, who lived just a few hundred yards away. Her mother agreed, as their neighborhood was very safe. Before April left, her mother reminded her to call Nicole as soon as she got to her house and gave her an umbrella, as it was nearly 3 p.m. and rain was expected. A few minutes later, when she arrived at Nicole's house, April called her mother. Her mother told her to be home by 4 p.m. When that time passed, April still hadn't returned, causing her mother to worry that she might have gotten caught in the rain. She called Nicole's house to check on her. Nicole's mother answered and said that April and Nicole had gone to a nearby playground. It started to rain, and April realized that she had left her umbrella at Nicole's house. She told Nicole that she would go back to Nicole's house to get her umbrella, and then come home, since she had promised her mother that she would come home when it started to rain. April returned home first, while Nicole went to another friend's house to play, and the two girls parted ways. When April's mother did not see her daughter return, she called Nicole's mother to ask about the situation, and Nicole's mother told her. April had not come to pick up her umbrella, even though she had left the playground nearly an hour earlier. April's mother was worried, and she informed her husband that their daughter was missing. They both went out to look for April, and some neighbors joined them when they heard about April's disappearance. They searched all the streets connecting Nicole's house, the playground, and their house, but they found no sign of her. Finally, her parents decided to contact the police. The police came to their house, investigated April's information, and began the search. Within hours, many neighbors had joined together to help the Tinsley family search for April, searching the area along the route she often took, but found no sign of her. As night fell, the police began to fear that she might have been kidnapped, believing they would have found her if she had simply gotten lost. It seemed as if she had disappeared completely. The next day, the search area was expanded and news of April's disappearance spread throughout the city. Even with more police and volunteers involved, they still found no trace of her or any clues. April had been missing for 3 days, until April 4th, when a man went jogging about 20 miles from April's home. While running through some fields, he saw a human body lying in a ditch. Alarmed, he called 911 to report the incident. Police quickly arrived at the scene and identified the body as April Tinsley. She was fully clothed, except for one shoe, which was missing. Although officers did not see any obvious signs of trauma, police suspected that April had been murdered. They believed that the perpetrator may have killed her elsewhere and then left her body in the ditch. Near the body, police also discovered an adult toy, but they were unsure if it was related to the case. They later found April's missing shoe across the street. The autopsy results showed that April died of asphyxiation and sexual assault. They estimated that her death occurred within 2 days before her body was discovered, indicating that the perpetrator had kept her alive for some time. The police collected DNA from the body, but at that time, the FBI did not have a DNA database, and DNA analysis was not yet developed. Therefore, the police had to focus on finding new clues. After the body was found, the police appealed to the public through the media to receive more information about the case. 2 important clues emerged. A man contacted police to report that he had driven past the field where April's body was found and had noticed an old blue pickup truck parked on the side of the road. Police thought the truck might have belonged to the killer, and that witnesses might have seen it when the suspect dumped April's body. The second clue was even more important. A woman who lived along the road from the playground to Nicole's house claimed that she had seen a girl who looked like April on the day she went missing. A second witness reported that as April walked down the street, an old blue pickup truck stopped next to her. Moments later, the truck drove away with her. The vehicle blocked the witnesses' view, making it impossible for them to see how the girl got into the truck. The witness also described the driver as a white man, about 30 years old, with blonde hair. Police have created a sketch of the suspect and shared it with the media, hoping that someone will identify him. The FBI soon joined the investigation. Together with the police, they looked into the possible involvement of all the men who had previously been convicted of sex crimes living in April's area and tried to find new leads. The police then received a tip that the suspect's profile matched that of a man who had been involved in some organized crime and had joined Satanism. The police checked him out but found no connection to April's case. However, the police arrested him for another crime. The police continued to follow up on other leads, but they made no progress. This went on for months and eventually, the police hit a dead end. During the investigation into April's murder, police uncovered several other crimes against children and arrested several suspects, but they were unable to identify April's killer. For many years, there were no significant updates on the case. However, in May 1990, a breakthrough occurred. A boy, who lived about 10 miles from where April's body was found, discovered a note on his shed. The note appeared to be from the killer, who confessed to killing April and hinted that more killings might occur in the future. The author of the note also asked if police had found April's second shoe. This led police to suspect that the person who wrote the note was indeed April's killer. At that time, the media had not reported that the April's shoe was found several hundred yards from her body, meaning only the killer would know this information. Another interesting detail is that the message was originally written in pencil and then outlined in marker. This led police to believe that the perpetrator may have left the message months ago and then returned to make it more visible by sketching it. Police decided to release a photo of the message in the hopes that someone would recognize the handwriting, but this effort yielded no leads. A few months later, Fort Wayne residents were shocked to hear that police had discovered the body of a 7-year-old girl in another part of the city. She had been sexually assaulted and died of asphyxiation. Because of the alarming similarities to April's case, police suspected that the same killer was responsible for both murders. However, FBI analysts believed that the 2 cases involved 2 different perpetrators. No progress was made in either case until 1995, when it was confirmed that the second murder was committed by a deceased family friend. As a result, the case was closed and police no longer linked it to April's murder. Police are also awaiting new messages from the killer. His original message said he enjoyed taunting police. Years passed without any new evidence. However, in 2004, the situation changed dramatically. A girl from Fort Wayne discovered a Ziploc plastic bag in her bicycle basket containing a terrifying note. She immediately gave it to her parents, who then contacted the police. The note read, "Hello, honey, I've been watching you. I'm the one who kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered April Tinsley. I have a gift for you. You will be my next victim if you don't call the police and if I don't see this note on the local news tomorrow. I will destroy your house, kill everyone but you. You will be mine." Police were certain that the author of the note was April's killer. Along with the note, they found the used condom, which was sent for laboratory analysis. By 2004, DNA testing was commonly used, and experts had already developed a DNA profile from the semen found on April's body. The analysis revealed that the DNA from the condom matched this profile, but the suspect was not listed in the FBI database. The police reopened April's case and soon received a report about a second note. Another girl had discovered a plastic bag containing a similar message. The note stated that the writer had killed April Tinsley and threatened to kill her as well. Inside the bag was another used condom, which also contained the DNA of the same man. In the following months, police received 2 more reports of similar notes found by other girls. In these cases, the perpetrator included Polaroid photos of his genitals. Police examined the images for clues to identify the suspect. But they only found the green patterned bed sheet in the background, which was on the killer's bed. They searched for stores that sold similar bedding, but this effort did not yield any leads. Over the course of a few months, the perpetrator left for notes, but then he suddenly stopped communicating for years. In 2009, the FBI released a profile of the killer based on eyewitness descriptions of his appearance, hoping to generate new leads. However, this did not help the Fort Wayne police. The case remained a top priority for a number of reasons. Most importantly, they wanted to bring justice to April and hold the killer accountable. The killer also taunted the police with his text messages, confident that he would never be caught. He even threatened other girls and left his DNA for the police to find. Police collected numerous biological samples over the years, but April's killer was never matched to the FBI database. This means he had not been arrested for serious crimes and was still at large. In 2012, April's case was featured on a popular television show about unsolved cases, but with no new leads, the case went cold again. In 2015, police reopened the investigation and contacted Parabon, a company that provides creative services to law enforcement. Experts there create portraits based on DNA samples, and this approach has helped solve several cases. Police contacted Parabon, who created a portrait of the suspect in the case in April. The portrait was posted online and shared with the media in the hope that someone would recognize the person. Unfortunately, they did not receive any useful leads. However, the police were determined to continue their investigation. In 2018, they contacted Parabon again, this time to use a new method called genetic genealogy. Experts will take a DNA sample and search public genetic databases to find potential relatives of the DNA sample owner, even if they are distant relatives. They often find thousands of people, then research their family tree and identify someone who fits the criteria of the perpetrator, such as gender, age, place of residence at the time of the crime. The special thing about this method is that the DNA owner does not need to be in any stored database. This method identifies through relatives. The police investigating April's case sent the killer's DNA sample to Parabon again and waited for the results. Tracing the family ties took months as experts analyzed the extensive data. They eventually told police they had narrowed the DNA lineage down to 2 brothers living in Fort Wayne. The police's next step was to find out if one of the brothers was the killer. They tracked both men down and collected their trash, hoping experts could extract DNA samples from it. 30 years after April's death, police found a DNA match between samples taken from April's body and a condom found at the scene, leading police to John Miller, 59. He lived in a small town called Grail, near where April's body was found. He was 29 years old at the time of the murder and lived in a trailer. The police's next step was to take a DNA sample directly from John R. and question him. When police approached his trailer, they informed him that they wanted to ask him some questions at the station. John inquired about the reason for their visit, and one officer asked him to guess. He then replied, "April Tinsley." The police decided to take John to the station for further questioning. During the ride, he chatted comfortably with the police. When they began questioning John, he confessed to kidnapping and killing April. According to John, on the day April disappeared, he deliberately went to Fort Wayne and drove around the streets looking for a girl to kidnap. Finding April on a deserted street, he stopped and told her to get into his car. He said April silently agreed, which the police found strange. However, witnesses did not hear any screams or signs of a struggle, so the police did not rule out the possibility that John convinced April to get into the car willingly. He took her to his trailer, sexually assaulted her, and killed her. He then loaded her body into his pickup truck, drove to the fields, and dumped her in a ditch. He also admitted that the adult toys found at the scene belonged to him. 6 months after his arrest, when John Miller's first trial began, John, on the advice of his attorney, pleaded not guilty. John received a plea deal. The prosecutor initially sought the death penalty, but if John admitted guilt, the sentence would be replaced with a prison sentence. Ultimately, Miller accepted the plea deal, confessed his guilt in court, and was sentenced to 80 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2058, when he will be 99 years old. April's mother, who attended the trial, was disappointed that John was not given the death penalty, but admitted that given his age, the chances of him being released were slim. April's father was unable to attend the trial due to health reasons, but he expressed gratitude to the police for their efforts in finding his daughter's killer. The case of Belinda Temple. Belinda Temple was born and raised in Texas. In 1986, Belinda went to college in her hometown, while her twin sister, Brenda, left to study at Stephen F. Austin University. Belinda decided to stay with her parents because she was dating Marshall Kummer, who was 3 years older than her. She was completely absorbed in the relationship. However, Belinda's parents were not pleased. They were concerned that the relationship would disrupt her studies, leading to her having children early and dropping out of school. This caused a lot of tension in the family. Belinda's mother, Carol, did not agree to her daughter living with Marshall. Belinda was a strong-willed and determined girl, and she may have taken her mother's advice as a threat. So at a family dinner when Marshall was invited, Belinda and Marshall, despite their mother's objections, announced that they were getting married. The atmosphere at the dinner table became heavy and quiet. Belinda decided to get married to prove to her parents she was an adult. Her boyfriend wasn't eager but didn't refuse. They married without a grand celebration, with Belinda wearing her sister's white dress and spending the day with friends drinking champagne. The next day, she moved in with him at his parents' place. The marriage was mainly to stop her mom's criticism and gain independence. But not 6 months later, Marshall began to spend little time at home, saying he was working late, but was actually with another woman. Belinda found out when she noticed that her husband was acting strangely one day. She waited until his workday was over and followed her husband, and that's when it all came to light. Marshall was walking hand in hand with some strange woman, most likely with his colleague. Belinda didn't start any arguments or jealousy, she just packed her things and went back to her mother. Marshall kept trying to ask for Belinda's forgiveness, but she wouldn't budge. After that, they soon divorced. In 1987, Belinda had nothing to keep her in her hometown, so she decided to follow her sister to Stephen F. Austin State University. Her time at the university was a positive experience for Belinda. It seemed that she had found her purpose. In addition to studying, Belinda also worked part-time as a basketball coach, and the young girl had very high expectations. At the same university, Belinda met David Temple. Like Belinda, He was also a part-time coach, but in soccer, and he was also a member of the university soccer team as captain. For David, soccer was an integral part of life. He had started practicing soccer since he was a child, and from that time on it was clear that he had the potential to become a star at school. He often played soccer very successfully for the team and was respected by all the teachers, despite his unpleasant personality. David can easily insult or even hit someone, but he gets away with it easily when he is on the field during a match. He often starts the match in a heated situation and then takes a long time to calm down. One of David's teammates said that he has an aggressive nature because of his steroid use. However, in their relationship, David acts completely differently from Belinda. He becomes a caring person and loves her very much. As soon as someone smiles at Belinda, David becomes jealous and tries to clarify his relationship. Belinda met David's family and they were impressed with her. They thought that Belinda and David had a lot in common. But Belinda's sister was not happy about the relationship. They knew Belinda as a strong-willed and independent person before, but as the relationship began, they noticed a change in her. Belinda became withdrawn, quiet and modest, and her life seemed to revolve around pleasing David. Belinda also began to distance herself from her family. She called her parents less often and stopped visiting home as she used to. This was a worrying sign in a toxic relationship. However, David and Belinda continued their relationship. They bought a bull terrier and named him Shaq. After graduating from college, they decided to get married. In January 1999, David and Belinda Temple were expecting their second child. Belinda was nearing her due date, and doctors predicted that she would go into labor in a few weeks. As a pregnant mother, Belinda often felt tired and fatigued. She also had to care for her son Evan. To give his wife some rest, David decided to take Evan for a walk in the park that evening. They walked in the fresh air, but soon felt tired and hungry. They then went to a restaurant for a bite to eat. When they got home, David was shocked to find the front door of his house broken. To keep Evan safe, David quickly took his son to a friend's house who lived nearby, and when his son asked why he couldn't come home, David lied and said his mother was in the hospital. One of David's neighbors, Quentin Harland, had just opened the door to the unexpected visitor, David. He carried his son straight into the living room and quickly returned to the house. Quentin was confused by this and yelled for his wife to watch the child and ran after David. He asked David, "What's going on?" But when he saw the broken front door of the Temple house, Quentin realized that David probably had no idea what was waiting for him inside. When he entered the house, Quentin saw a horrible scene. Everything was in ruins, the cabinets were open, furniture was scattered on the floor, and especially there were blood stains on the floor leading to the stairs. Quentin quickly pushed David aside and saw under the stairs, in the dressing room, Belinda lying face down with her arms outstretched in a large hole in the back of her head. David seemed too shocked to say anything or rushed to his wife's body. He took out his cell phone and called the police. Police immediately rushed to the scene but did not enter the house immediately because the Temple family's dog, Shaq, was aggressive. The dog growled and barked at the uniformed officers, prompting one of them to draw his gun. However, the situation was calmed when David Temple came out of the house, then led the dog into the garage. When the officers entered the house, they investigated the scene and concluded that it appeared that a robbery had occurred. They speculated that the burglars did not know that the homeowner was in the house at the time, so they shot her to avoid exposing witnesses. The police began investigating the crime scene. They wondered how the burglar could have entered a house guarded by a ferocious bull terrier. They began to investigate carefully. At the main entrance, the police found broken glass. But this glass was not broken by someone trying to unlock it from the inside, as the glass fragments would have been concentrated near the threshold. Instead, the glass fragments were located far from the door, to the right of the entrance. This indicated that the main door was unlocked and the glass was broken, and it was unclear why the burglar did so. The police opened a box on the nightstand in the living room and found several pieces of jewelry that appeared to be gold. It was unclear why the burglar did not take these pieces of jewelry. The more they investigated, the more suspicious the police became that something was not right around the case. The police's experience with robberies had taught them that the criminal would usually take whatever was valuable and could be found. But in this case, nothing seemed to have been taken. And the fact that the dog was still in their minds was a big deal. Something was wrong with the case. In the murder, the wound suggested the victim had been shot in the back of the head. It is likely that the weapon used was a 12-gauge shotgun, since the victim was kneeling with his back to the killer. But shotguns were uncommon in robberies and were difficult to carry or transport without being detected, which made the police even more suspicious. In the murder of Belinda, it happened at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. A typical criminal would not dare go out with a shotgun in the daytime. David mentioned that he owned a few rifles. However, when the police came to search, the handgun involved in the case was not among the weapons that David had reported. The police asked David to come to the police station to file a report and confess the stolen items. Although worried, David agreed to participate. Police began investigating Belinda's relationships. A young boy named Riley Joe Sanders came to the attention of the police. Riley is a student of Belinda's at school. He has an explosive personality and is especially fond of skipping school. Belinda was not one of those teachers who turned a blind eye to student absenteeism. So when she noticed that one of her students, Riley, had been absent from class for months, she immediately reached out to her colleagues. She wanted to know if this was her problem as a teacher or if the boy was a systematic truant. Her colleagues answered that it was not her problem. The boy was brought up in a bad family, and no one cared about him. He appeared at school only rarely. Belinda couldn't leave it at that. That same evening, she visited his mother, who lived nearby, and had a serious talk with her, which later bore fruit. However, it wasn't quite what the young teacher had expected. Riley Joe Sanders came to class. But during a basketball game, when Sanders pushed his opponent and Belinda pointed out Riley's disgusting behavior, he insulted her with the last words and even said something like, "You'll answer to me for this. You better look around, especially in the evenings." Riley had no explanation for where he was on the day of the murder and had also threatened Belinda. He was brought in for questioning. His father had a .12 caliber gun, but when the police searched the house, they did not find a weapon. When Riley realized that the police suspected him, he confessed that he had been with friends on the day of the murder. He had kept quiet because he had been in a large group and did not want to hurt anyone. The charges against Riley were dropped. Beside that, the police began questioning Quentin Harlan. David and Quentin were not only neighbors but also co-workers at the same school. They had a close friendship and often met outside of work to watch sports on TV or attend family barbecues. One day, David and Quentin discovered a new young teacher at the school named Heather Scott. Quentin showed special interest in her, even asking her out to dinner, but Quentin's efforts were unsuccessful because Heather declined the invitation. Quentin accidentally discovered a secret relationship between David and another woman. This made Quentin very angry and resentful because David was married and had a son. However, Quentin kept it a secret and did not reveal anything to others. In the work environment, David and this woman seemed to be a happy couple, and many people in the teaching staff had the same impression. However, no one knew that David had another wife named Belinda. Belinda did not suspect that her husband was having an affair. In fact, she even shared with Quentin that she suspected that David was cheating, but Quentin reassured her that David was a good man and could not do such a thing. However, the way David treated Belinda also changed over time. In the past, he was very respectful and loving towards her. But now he often insulted and hurt her. He called her fat, even though she had only gained a little weight after giving birth. He also often asked her to go to another room when there were guests in the house, as if she did not deserve to be with everyone. Belinda felt extremely unhappy and lonely when faced with this treatment from David. She did not dare to talk seriously with him about this, but cried at night and felt bad about herself. Meanwhile, David was in a very happy new romantic relationship with Heather. David increasingly distant from his family. The psychological pressure he put on his wife was increasing. Although he never raised a hand to hit her, their interactions consisted almost exclusively of insults. At this time, Belinda learned that she was pregnant. When she received this news, she forgot all of David's previous mistakes and felt very happy. It seemed that David also tried to present himself as a happy father, but he was unsuccessful. Sometimes David did not come home at night, and Belinda was afraid to ask him why he was absent at night. She was afraid that her husband might become very angry and cause a scandal. Therefore, Belinda often had to do everything herself while preparing for the birth of the child. She went shopping, painted the walls herself, and assembled the furniture she had bought. David seemed unconcerned and made no effort to help his wife. Belinda prepared everything for the upcoming baby herself, while David seemed to be only concerned with his new relationship. Christmas was approaching, and Belinda was 8 months pregnant. She decided to discuss with her husband David what gifts they would give each other for the occasion. However, David suggested that they skip giving each other gifts this year. He thought it would be better if they used their savings for the upcoming baby, as the doctors had warned that she might go into labor early, and the baby might be born before the new year. When Christmas came, although they had agreed not to give each other gifts, David did not give Belinda any small gifts. Instead, he suddenly packed his things and said that he would spend the New Year holiday hunting with his friends. Belinda felt disappointed and shared the situation with her sister. Her sister decided to help Belinda feel less alone. She also wanted to be there to care for Belinda, as doctors had warned that labor could start at any moment. What Belinda did not know, however, was that David had not gone hunting with his friends. Instead, he had spent the holiday with Heather, who was wearing a gold necklace that was said to have been a Christmas gift from David. After the death of Belinda Temple, David remarried Heather in 2001 and they had a son, Evan. But in November 2004, David's peace was shattered when the police came knocking on his door and arrested him on suspicion of murdering his ex-wife. David continued to deny any guilt. Investigators discovered that his new relationship with Heather may have been the motive for the crime. David's co-workers said that when Belinda became pregnant, David often bragged that he had found a younger, more beautiful woman to replace his wife. According to the prosecution's report, David killed Belinda as soon as she got home, still wearing her uniform and work boots. He then staged the crime scene to look like a robbery by making a mess of the house and quickly taking his son to the park to create an alibi. The prosecution also added that nothing was stolen from the house, and there was a vicious dog in the yard that would not let any stranger in. The murder weapon was probably dropped by David in the rice paddy, as witnesses saw David's car stop near the paddy, with only Evan in the car at the time. However, the shotgun was never recovered in that area. Heather's testimony claimed that before Belinda's murder, her relationship with David was not serious, and she did not even love him. These words certainly did not please Temple and introduced confusion into the jury's decision. Could David kill his wife for a non-serious relationship? Or was Heather lying to save her husband? It wasn't until 2023 that the case was revisited. David was found guilty after all and was sentenced to life in prison with parole after 17 years. His son Evan, while the trial was ongoing, did not believe that his father was capable of such a cold-blooded murder and supported him until the last moment. The case of Kira Steger. Kira Steger was born on November 19, 1982, in Des Plaines, Illinois. She was the daughter of Marcy and Jay Kira, who described her as a bubbly, dedicated, and sweet person. Kira worked at the Mall of America, where she held positions at 2 stores, Wet Seal and, most recently, Delia's. Her co-workers were not only her best friends but also her family. She had a unique ability to see strengths in others that they had not yet seen. Kira had planned a bright and peaceful future. Unfortunately, her dreams came to an abrupt end when Kira mysteriously disappeared. On Thursday, February 21st, 2013, Kira had a shift. Her co-workers said she was feeling well and had plans to go out to dinner at a fancy restaurant with her husband, Jeffrey Trevino, after work. Kira and Jeffrey met 3 years ago and quickly fell in love. Kira and Jeffrey began a romantic relationship and eventually married, forming a happy and stable couple. Although they sometimes disagreed, they resolved everything in private, without letting anyone know about these disagreements. 2 days later, on Saturday, February 23rd, when Kira failed to show up for work, her co-workers became concerned because this was unlike her. Kira was always punctual, strict with herself and others, never late, and always kept to a schedule. When Kira could not be reached, her co-workers called Jeffrey, but he did not know where his wife was. Jeffrey said that Kira had left home the morning before and had not returned. He was not too worried because Kira had a habit of occasionally being absent for a day or two, often staying overnight at friends' or relatives' houses without notice. However, the bad weather with heavy snow that day may have worried him. Jeffrey thought that something might have happened to her on the road. Perhaps her car broke down and her cell phone ran out of battery. That same day, not receiving any news from his wife, Jeffrey reported her missing and contacted Kira's family. Her family was shocked by the mysterious disappearance of their loved one, and this was a huge shock for them. After receiving the report of Kira Steger's disappearance, detectives immediately began investigating. Investigators began by questioning Jeffrey and searching the nearby area. Detectives went to Jeffrey's home to talk to him. Jeffrey said that on Thursday, he and Kira wanted to spend time together. They had dinner, talked, went bowling, and then left the mall. According to Jeffrey, they both went home soon after because Kira planned to watch a movie. Jeffrey also told the detectives that his wife had left the house the following morning, Friday, around 8:30. A meeting had been scheduled at work that she had to attend. Kira was acting normally, and Jeffrey did not notice anything unusual. Jeffrey did not find anything unusual about Kira's occasional disappearances, although he did not know where she went or who she was spending time with. Jeffrey said that they had been having relationship problems for the past few months. However, he did not find it serious or alarming, but rather viewed it as the usual small arguments that occur in every family. The detective asked Jeffrey about who Kira might be seeing and whether she was in any other relationship. Jeffrey dismissed this idea, as he had asked Kira directly and she had denied it. According to Jeffrey, he truly loved Kira and trusted her. Investigators turned over all the information they had gathered about Kira and her car to the patrol team. Detectives also went directly to the Mall of America to verify Jeffrey's statements and look for clues. The Mall of America, located in Bloomington, is one of the largest malls in the world, with 520 stores, an amusement park, an aquarium, a movie theater, a golf course, and many other amenities. The mall has numerous security cameras, so detectives reviewed the footage of Kira leaving the company on February 21st. The video did not show anything unusual. Jeffrey's initial statement was very credible. He met Kira after work. They stayed in the mall for a while, then went down to the parking lot and left. There was no argument, and the evening went smoothly. Waiting without knowing what had happened was difficult, and each passing day made Kira's family more and more worried about her safety. With no word from her, Kira's family traveled to Bloomington to help with the investigation. They printed flyers with Kira's picture on them, posted them on utility poles, and handed them out to passers-by. Their goal was to attract as much attention as possible to find Kira. They knew they couldn't just stand by and had to take action to find their loved one. While Kira's family was handing out flyers, the investigators continued their investigation. While interviewing neighbors, the police discovered a surveillance camera on a neighbor's home. The camera was pointed at Kira and Jeffrey's home. The investigators asked the homeowner to copy the footage from the camera because they hoped to find clues in it. Meanwhile, records from a cell phone company provided them with a new lead. According to phone records, Kira was in a relationship with someone other than Jeffrey. That person was Ryan Wendt, the manager of the chain of stores where she worked. They had a deep relationship and corresponded frequently. Police determined that Ryan had left the state and that when the search for Kira began, Ryan was driving to Colorado. This man was closely related to the investigation because, in addition to his relationship with Kira, he was out of state at the time of her disappearance. It could be a coincidence, or there could be something else going on behind his departure. Investigators needed answers. After several attempts, detectives were able to contact Ryan. He said the last time he had contact with Kira was when he was driving through South Dakota and texting her. These messages were sent shortly before Kira went missing. After reviewing the timestamps, detectives determined that Kira had contacted her new lover while she was having dinner with her husband. The messages showed that Kira had become increasingly distant from Jeffrey. Investigators ran a cell tower location check on Ryan's phone and checked his credit card statements. The results showed that he was indeed out of state that night and had no connection to Kira's disappearance. As a result, Ryan was released and cleared as a suspect. The timestamps on the messages showed that Kira was still texting Ryan even after she returned home to her husband. However, after 11:44 p.m., their conversation stopped, and Kira's phone was no longer active. Meanwhile, another investigation team was preparing to review video from a surveillance camera installed at Kira's neighbor's home. The camera captured most of the street scene from left to right. However, it rotated so quickly that it was difficult to observe. If the camera saw something suspicious, it immediately moved in another direction. Jeffrey and Kira's house was only visible for a few seconds when the camera panned to the right. Jeffrey said that after dinner and bowling, he and Kira went home, watched a movie, and went to bed. However, when investigators reviewed the footage, they discovered that just after 2 a.m., Kira's car backed into the driveway. Because the footage was poor and the camera kept moving, it was difficult to determine exactly what was happening at that time. The car then left the house. Jeffrey explained that Kira had asked him to fill up her car with gas for work the next day, so he went to the gas station. Surprisingly, this story was true. He was seen at the gas station around 3:30 a.m. However, detectives discovered that after leaving the gas station, he headed toward the highway instead of home. It is unclear where Jeffrey went next. The neighbor's camera did not record him returning, but this may have been a coincidence since the camera was always moving. Therefore, in theory, Jeffrey could have gotten home later since the camera was capturing a different angle. When investigators reviewed the video, they saw Kira's Chevrolet leave at 9:21 a.m. Unfortunately, they couldn't determine who was driving. A missing person report was filed on Saturday, February 23rd, and on Monday, February 25th, police received a call about a suspicious car parked near the shopping center where Kira worked. There are 2 multi-story parking lots there. A security guard found the car parked for several days and asked for it to be towed. When the driver inspected the car before towing it, he noticed suspicious red stains on the trunk lid and immediately called the police. That car turned out to be Kira's white car. Although there wasn't much blood, just a few small stains, it was still very concerning. In the car, they found Kira's wallet and a divorce form downloaded from the internet. Additionally, a dark object in the snow behind the car caught the attention of the investigators. As they approached, they found a rolled-up trunk mat with dark stains. DNA testing confirmed that it was Kira Steger's blood. The investigators were devastated to realize that Kira was most likely dead. This heartbreaking news was a huge shock to her family and friends. Their last hope of seeing Kira again was dashed, leaving them with questions. How did she die? Was she in pain? Who could hate her enough to take her life? The fact that Kira's body had not been found added to the confusion, as the endless grief seemed unlikely to be alleviated. The detectives made it a top priority to find out who had left the car in the parking lot. The car left the house at 9:21 a.m., and about 20 minutes later, it was caught on a mall camera. There were no cameras in the parking lot where the car was found, but another camera recorded the road leading to the lot, which was located near where Kira's car was parked. After reviewing the camera footage, detectives found that a hooded man appeared a few minutes after Kira's white Chevrolet pulled into the lot. It was cold enough that it was not unusual for him to be wearing a hoodie, but detectives wanted to learn more about where he went. The hooded man was seen walking across the street and approaching a taxi stand. He briefly chatted with the driver, then got into a cab and drove away. Police were able to determine the company that owned the taxis in the mall parking lot. Based on the time he spent talking to the drivers, police were able to determine the license plate numbers. All of the taxis had GPS tracking devices, which showed that the man ended up about a block away from Kira and Jeffrey's house and left after paying in cash. As the taxi left the neighborhood, it was caught on camera, the same camera that had filmed part of Kira and Jeffrey's house. 2 minutes later, a man in a hoodie entered the frame. The low resolution of the video made it difficult to identify his face, but the white logo on his shirt was clearly visible. As investigators continued to examine the video, they saw the man enter Kira and Jeffrey's house. Kira was missing, leading to suspicions that the hooded man might be Jeffrey. After obtaining a search warrant, the police went to the house. At first, the house looked normal and unremarkable. However, upon closer inspection, forensic experts discovered dark red stains in Kira and Jeffrey's bedroom. There were several on the wall near the bed and about 100 on the mattress. It was clear that the bedroom had been rearranged and cleaned recently. When the forensic team sprayed luminol, the carpeting glowed. There were bloodstains throughout the house that were not visible to the naked eye. The bloodstains originated in the bedroom and extended to other areas of the house. Forensic testing confirmed that the blood belonged to Kira, leading investigators to believe that she was no longer alive. In addition to searching the house, police also searched Jeffrey's car. There were no bloodstains or signs of a struggle. However, they found one interesting detail: a gas station receipt in Jeffrey's car, dated 1 hour and 40 minutes before Kira's car was abandoned in the mall parking lot. According to the receipt, the transaction was made using Jeffrey's card. Detectives went to the gas station to review the security cameras. The camera recorded Jeffrey filling up with gas, then going inside to withdraw money from an ATM. The video clearly showed Jeffrey's face and a logo on his jacket that looked similar to the logo on the man in the earlier footage. With video evidence and all the evidence in the house, Jeffrey Trevino, 39, was arrested. He was taken to the police station for questioning and is now the prime suspect. Immediately after being released from the interrogation room, Jeffrey contacted a lawyer and was advised to exercise his right to remain silent. The police had enough evidence to charge him, but the most compelling evidence was Kira's body. No one suspected Kira was dead at the time. Police, Kira's family, and volunteers searched for her for months. In late March, as the snow melted, a volunteer found a strange bag on the edge of Keller Lake a few miles from Jeffrey's house and called the police. The bag contained a bloody pillow, a shirt, and a bra. The forensic team linked these items to Kira because her DNA was found on them. The lake remained frozen, hampering the search. However, when divers surveyed the water, they found no remains. The area around the lake was searched several times with 4 cadaver dogs, trained to find dead bodies, but to no avail. 2.5 months after Kira's disappearance, on May 8, 2013, the St. Paul Police Department received a disturbing call. The caller reported that he had seen what appeared to be a body in the Mississippi River. Police discovered and recovered a body. The body was naked. Dental records identified it as Kira Steger. She had suffered severe trauma to the forehead and a broken left index finger. Because the body was so badly decomposed, the medical examiner was unable to determine the exact cause of death. Using new evidence, investigators attempted to reconstruct a timeline of the events leading up to Kira's death and the events that followed. They believed that when Kira and Jeffrey returned home, Jeffrey found her texting with someone else. When Kira refused to show her husband the messages, he snatched the phone from her and broke her fingers. After reading the romantic messages, Jeffrey became even angrier, and in a fit of rage, he killed Kira and tried to cover up the crime. He drove Kira's car to the house, put the body in the trunk, then went to the gas station before taking the body to the riverbank and dumping it. He then returned home, discarding the bag containing Kira's pillow and clothes along the way. The next morning, he went to the gas station to withdraw cash from an ATM, knowing that after leaving Kira's car in the shopping center car park, he would need cash to pay for a taxi. After leaving Kira's car, Jeffrey went home and spent the day cleaning. He tried to make it look like Kira had driven away that morning and that nothing had happened. However, this plan was foiled by surveillance cameras. In October 2013, a jury convicted Jeffrey Trevino, 39. They accepted that his actions were not intentional and that they were the result of a heated after discovering that his wife was having an affair. Before the judge handed down his sentence, Kira's family spoke out. "This monster was a calculating criminal," said Carrie Ann Steger, Kira's sister. "He deserves no mercy." Kira's mother, Marcy, said Jeffrey showed no sympathy for her daughter. "He dumped my daughter like a piece of trash into the most polluted water in the country," she said. But her father, Jay, said, "No punishment can ever make up for the pain Jeffrey has caused our family. No amount of time for Jeffrey is enough, never enough," he said. In November 2013, Jeffrey Trevino was sentenced to 27.5 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2031. The case of Vicki Glass. Vicki Glass was born on September 21, 1979 in Stockton-on-Tees, a small town in the northeast of England, on the banks of the River Tees. She has an older sister named Claire, who is 1 year older. When Vicki was 6 years old, her parents, Deborah and Anthony, decided to divorce. Her mother, Deborah, later married another man named Colin Goodall, and Vicki had a half-sister named Cheryl and a brother named Thomas. Although her parents divorced, they continued to live in Stockton. Vicki developed a passion for music from an early age, becoming a big fan of Michael Jackson and the musical Cats. Between the ages of 13 and 18, she joined a local jazz band and often performed with her friends. After graduating from Blackstone High School, Vicki continued her studies at the academy and earned 5 college degrees. However, her life changed dramatically. At 18, Vicki fell in with a bad group of friends and began her drug addiction. Her illegal activities were mainly in the Cannon Park and Gresham areas of Middleborough, near her home. Her illegal activities were mainly in the Cannon Park and Gresham areas of Middleborough, near her hometown. In 1999, Vicki became homeless and contracted severe pneumonia. During this difficult time, her friend introduced her to a man named Patch Claus. This man provided her with a temporary place to heal. For months, Vicky lived with Patch, who cared for her and provided her with medication. However, this support was not enough to help Vicky escape her addiction and unhealthy lifestyle. On September 23, 2000, a few days after her 21st birthday, Vicky left Patch's house with her friend for the last time. She had initially stayed at Cannon Park in Gresham. Vicky also worked as an escort on Set Road in Middleborough, and they drove to Main Road. Main Road was notorious for escorting and illegal activities. After staying there for a while, Vicky and her client left and hailed a ring taxi. The taxi driver then took them to a man's house in Norton, only 3 blocks away from where they had left. Vicky stayed there once more before hailing another taxi to return to Middleborough. The taxi that picked her up was a white Vauxhall Vectra, registration number 790, at 4 a.m. on Sunday, September 24th. She got out at the intersection of Union Road and Ashwood Square, near a pub called The Colleague. From there, Vicky was only a 5-minute walk to Patch's residence, where she lived with the man. However, she did not return home. Patch became concerned when Vicky did not return and began calling, visiting friends and going to places she frequented, but there was no news of her. After 3 days, he contacted the police, and on September 27th, an investigation into Vicky's disappearance was launched. A week after Vicky went missing, on October 5th, the local paper, the Northern Echo, published an article headlined, "Missing Young Woman." In the article, Vicky was described as being about 5 feet 1 inch tall, with blonde hair tied in a ponytail. She was wearing a white t-shirt, light gray trousers and white trainers. The article also quoted a police officer as saying that Vicky was a known prostitute and frequented hot spots. Vicky's family refused to give up and were determined to find out who was behind the incident. In 2018, the police received additional funding to try to find a criminal. On Friday, November 3rd, a man was walking his dog in the village of Demi, 20 miles southwest of Middleborough. At 6 a.m., he walked past a ditch near the main road in the village and discovered the decomposing, unclothed body parts of a woman. He quickly called the police, who arrived and identified the victim as Vicky Glass, a 21-year-old woman who had gone missing. The cause of her death has not yet been determined. North Yorkshire and Cleveland police immediately began an investigation. A team of 40 police officers were sent to the scene to collect evidence and conduct forensic examinations. However, no traces were found at the scene, and the clothes Vicky was wearing when she went missing were not found. Detective Brian Dan, who is leading the investigation, has appealed to journalists to contact anyone who knew Vicky, spoke to her, and has any information that could help the investigation. As Demi was a popular tourist destination, police appealed to anyone who might have been in the area to contact them. Police noted that the car that brought Vicky to the village may have stopped on the roadside outside the village before entering the village, and asked people to be aware of this stop. On November 13, 2000, Vicky's mother Deborah addressed the press appealing for witnesses to her daughter's disappearance. Police placed a picture of Vicky in the pub where she was last reported missing, as well as in other areas of the city where sex workers were known to operate. By November 20th, police had interviewed nearly 500 people and received more than 150 statements. Those interviewed included former clients of Vicky and drivers who used the Cannon Park overnight car park where Vicky and other sex workers often worked. The police laid flowers on her grave where her body was found. They then appealed to the public for any information that might help them find the culprit. 2 men in Vicky's family tried to stay calm, appealing for the public's cooperation in the investigation. Meanwhile, Vicky's mother, Deborah, was extremely distraught and could not attend the ceremony. After questioning many people, the police found important information. They said that about 12 prostitutes may have information related to Vicky's disappearance. The police began a more thorough investigation. In March, the police began to closely monitor lorry drivers stopping at Cannon Park car park. Next, the police arrested a 39-year-old man from Grimsby, but he was released on bail and his identity is still kept secret from the public. On January 9, 2002, police arrested a 47-year-old man on suspicion of being involved in Vicky's case. 2 days after his arrest, on January 11th, the man's name was given as Eric Coates. He was a resident of South North Yorkshire and lived about 45 miles south of Middleborough. Eric regularly used the services of prostitutes and was a client of Vicky. This was the third time Eric had been questioned about Vicky's disappearance. Police searched his home, where he lived with his parents. Police said Eric could not provide an alibi for his whereabouts on the day Vicky went missing, although he did mention that he may have been at his home because it was his father's birthday that evening. Eric Coates later gave an interview to the Northern Echo, saying that, according to rumors, Vicky had been murdered over a drug debt and that he did not want anyone else to die like that. He also expressed hope that a criminal would be found. Police found no clear evidence and Eric was released without charge. In July 2002, Cleveland police announced their intention to question another suspect, John Taylor. John had been sentenced to life in prison for the kidnap and murder of 16-year-old Leanne Turner in Leeds, West Yorkshire. He kidnapped Leanne Turner while she was shopping in the city centre on Christmas Eve 2000, took her home and brutally murdered her. Leanne's body was found 9 months later by Cleveland Police Inspector Jim Tate. Policeman Jim Tate told the press about the progress of the investigation, but no further information about John Taylor was available in connection with Vicky's case. To mark the second anniversary of Vicky's death, in September 2002, her mother, Deborah, held a press conference appealing for help from the media. In her heartbreaking speech, she shared the pain she had suffered since losing her child and how she had considered suicide because she could not bear the pain. After a long delay, a further investigation into Vicky's case was launched. However, when this investigation was carried out in August 2003, the results of Vicky's autopsy could not determine the cause of death. This was because Vicky's body had decomposed so badly over time that many of her body parts, including major organs and some bones, were missing. The subsequent investigation also found no signs of injury or abuse to Vicky. Later that year, Vicky's mother, Deborah, and stepfather Colin visited the site in Denny where Vicky's body was found to pay their respects. They were followed by reporters from ITV. In a 20-second video, Deborah can be seen fighting back tears as she says Vicky did not deserve to die like that. Gordon Lamp from Cleveland Police also said that despite 10 years having passed, they would continue to try to find the criminal responsible for Vicky's death. 10 years after Vicky's death on September 24, 2010, her parents spoke to reporters for information and discussed the emotional pain caused by the decade-long hunt for her killer. Her mother, Deborah, said she thinks about Vicky every day and cannot get over her loss. Vicky's mother, Deborah, died in 2015 at the age of 55 and will never know who was responsible for her daughter's death. In 2017, Cleveland Police, along with Crime Commissioner Barry Coppinger, applied for special funding from the Home Office to fund the investigation of 3 old criminal cases, including Vicky Glass's case. The story of Vicky Glass, it all started with her disappearance, but the reason why she was killed is still a big question. Currently, the mystery of Vicky's death is still unsolved and this causes unbearable pain to her family and friends. People continue to search for answers and hope to catch the culprit responsible for Vicky's tragic death, but unfortunately, after all these years, the culprit is still not found. The case of Shanynthia Gardner. Shanynthia Gardner was born in the late 80s in Memphis, Tennessee, USA. Not much is known about her childhood except that she was the daughter of Eleanor Snodgrass, who lived in a cozy wooden house in Madison, Alabama. Shaninthia's childhood and youth passed as normal as any other girl of her time. Shanynthia was a young girl with curly brown hair, slim and beautiful. She was always surrounded by loyal friends and showed outstanding talent. Shanynthia was full of creative spirit, had a unique talent for songwriting and a passion for music. She expressed herself through singing and attracted the attention of the local people. In addition to singing, Shanynthia was fascinated by the world of fashion and photography. She had the ability to turn everyday moments into works of art in front of the camera. Despite her diverse interests, Shanynthia was a charitable woman who attended church regularly and took good care of her family. Everything in Shaninthia's life seemed to be preordained and promised a bright future. Shanynthia was 14 when she met Daryl Clayton through mutual friends. They quickly became friends and their relationship became more serious after graduating from high school, becoming an official couple. They spent a lot of time together and were considered serious and stable young people. However, their crime records had some questionable details. Both had minor crimes such as traffic violations and disorderly conduct on the street. In 2008, Daryl was charged with assaulting a woman, even though the act was unintentional. He faced severe punishment, but all charges were later dropped. Shanynthia and Daryl were not officially married but lived together. In 2008, they had a son named Dee. Shanynthia became a caring mother, taking care of not only her son but also Daryl's 2 children from a previous relationship. Daryl's mother, Sonia Clayton, considered Shanynthia a family member, not just her son's lover. However, their relationship did not last. Although the reason is unknown, they kept in touch after the breakup. For Daryl, Shanynthia was still a good wife and a caring mother. When her son Dee was only 2 years old, Shanynthia was involved in a small incident, possibly a parking ticket or a small argument. This was insignificant compared to what would happen in her future. Marrying Martin Gardner opened a new chapter in Shaninthia's life. This union brought joy and stability to her life. Shanynthia won Martin over with her kindness and love for her children, which was reflected in her gentleness and intelligence. Their love story developed rapidly. In September 2013, they decided to live together and moved into an apartment complex in southeast Shelby County. The wedding marked the beginning of a new phase in their lives. After the celebration, they had their first son, Telone, followed by baby Saya in 2014. Soon after, their 2 daughters Savi and Yazzie were born, bringing happiness to their family. In total, Martin and Shanynthia have 4 children together and 1 child from Shaninthia's previous relationship. As a young mother, her children have always been her #1 priority. She enjoys working part-time at Children's Hospital and is actively involved in a fundraising organization to help children. It is her passion and purpose in life. On a normal Friday, July 1st, 2016, around noon, Shanynthia called her husband, Martin. Her voice was completely calm. She told him that she was going to take the children to the movies. There was no indication that something terrible was going to happen that day. At that moment, they was having a quiet conversation when a sudden and confusing event occurred. Shanynthia suddenly changed her attitude and took a kitchen knife into the living room. She attacked her 6-month-old daughter, Yazzie, leaving her defenseless and in a terrible situation. Yazzie's life was cut short abruptly by the person she loved and was closest to. Dee, the eldest child, was only 7 years old and witnessed this horrific scene. He was too young to understand what was happening, but he knew that he needed to act to save his younger brother and sister. Panicked and desperate, Dee ran out of the house. Shanynthia continued to hold the knife and chase her son. She rushed after Dee, but he screamed loudly, attracting the attention of the neighbors. Several neighbors heard his screams and rushed outside to see what was happening. They witnessed a horrifying scene that they could not forget in their minds. When they realized that Dee was being chased, but Shanynthia stopped. However, the horror was not over yet. Shanynthia returned to the house, where Savi and Talon were waiting for her. Distraught, she went upstairs to the bedroom where the children were lying. Those were the last moments of their innocent lives. Meanwhile, those who witnessed the horrifying scene quickly called the emergency services, asking for help and rescuing Dee and his siblings. None of them could have imagined the tragic consequences that awaited this peaceful street. The sheriff arrived at the scene and witnessed a strange scene inside the house at 7449 Southern Hill Road. They found Shanynthia covered in blood and her 4 children lying motionless, lifeless. The scene left everyone in shock. Shanynthia sat there, holding her cell phone and slowly dialing her husband, Martin. Her voice was soft but cold as she confessed to killing her children. The tragedy that had happened in their lives was a horrific event that would forever be remembered in this quiet neighborhood. By the time the prosecutor's office and the special forces arrived at the scene, everything was over. There was only an eerie silence in the house that had once been home to the happy Gardner family. Blood and horror were everywhere. Investigators found a bloody knife and witnessed the horrific incident. Chaplains came to help and were shocked by what had happened. Professionals were also ready to assist Dee, who was suffering from a horror that required immediate intervention. Shanynthia was arrested and held without bail. Her trial is scheduled for July 5th. The horrific events unfolding in Shanynthia Gardner's life have left society unable to remain indifferent. Although she has been portrayed as a monster, Shanynthia is still a mother and partner who radiates love, care, and joy. Her co-worker, Michelle Jaiman, has defended Shanynthia on social media and spoken out about the injustice of the charges. Michelle also emphasized the importance of considering postpartum depression in cases like this. Dr. Joel Rissman, a psychiatrist at the University of Tennessee Medical Center, confirmed that infanticide by mothers is rare and often accompanied by mental illness. He also pointed to the lack of mental health funding in the state, which leaves many families without the support they need. Dr. Diane Barnes, an expert in postpartum psychology and health, explained the difference between postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. She emphasized that the 2 conditions are completely different, with different symptoms. In Shanintia's case, Dr. Diane doubts that women with postpartum depression would commit such acts. Instead, she favors the possibility that Shanynthia suffered from psychosis. The investigation into Shanynthia Gardner's case has been fraught with difficulties. Her defense attorney, Craig Morton, has chosen not to comment on the case to the media in its early stages, saying it is too early to discuss it. On July 5, 2016, Shanynthia did not speak at her trial, appearing only via video. Judge Lambert questioned her, but Shanynthia did not respond. After the trial, she was taken to the Institute of Mental Health. Shanintia's family members were present in court but declined to comment to reporters. Morton's attorney and prosecutor, Jennifer Nichols, plans to file a motion to preserve evidence in the case, including information gathered from social media. In January 2017, Shanynthia was formally charged with 4 counts: aggravated child abuse, aggravated murder with a weapon, aggravated child abuse, and child neglect. The mysterious and chilling investigation continues, leaving the community waiting for justice and answers to many unanswered questions. The hearing was attended by Shanyntia's family members on the day of the tragedy. Sonia, Drill's mother, must have been devastated when she heard the news of the horrific tragedy. She rushed to the scene in a search for her nephew Dee. Sonia asserted that this action was completely unlike the Shanynthia she knew. Initially, she believed that something supernatural or demonic had caused the tragedy. However, as time passed and the initial shock subsided, Sonia began to consider possible reasons. She theorized that the couple may have been in the process of divorce. Shanynthia, fearful of raising 5 children on her own, may have made the terrifying decision to end it all. However, despite these speculations, Sonia found it hard to believe. To her, the Shanynthia she knew was not the person capable of such a terrible act. Dee's father did not believe Shanynthia was guilty. Although he was not the official guardian, he visited his son regularly after his separation from Shanynthia. However, the last time he saw his son was in November 2014. He noticed that Shanynthia was becoming more extreme in her actions and decisions. All attempts to contact her son failed, and he was banned from interfering in her life. Shaninthia's friends and family soon noticed a sudden change in her. She began to show unusual symptoms, from feeling irritable to deep anxiety, paranoia, and panic attacks. Her behavior became erratic and unpredictable, leading many to suspect that she was suffering from postpartum depression. The sudden change in Shaninthia's behavior shocked those around her. She had been a strong, dependable woman who had everything under control. But now, she seemed to have lost her temper, leaving many wondering what had happened. The first signs of trouble appeared in March 2015. Friends and family were puzzled. One day, Shanynthia left work early, picked up her 5 children, and drove off in an unknown direction. Her husband, Martin, thought his wife was just taking the children for a walk and relaxing in the park, as was her usual routine. However, after several hours, Martin was confused and decided to call the police. Shanynthia drove from Memphis to Corinth, 74 miles east, with her 5 children. She did not know anyone there and had no apparent reason for being there. She was later found in the emergency room at St. Francis Hospital, but police did not disclose any details. She had superficial cuts on her neck and wrists, possibly from a suicide attempt, but her children were too young to understand what was happening. After being brought home, Shanynthia began to act strangely. She told her husband Martin that someone had threatened their family, but did not provide any further information. This shocked Martin, who had never had any previous threats. When she was with family and friends, Shanynthia complained about her job and felt bad about it. She then began to say that some of her co-workers wanted to hurt her. Despite the unusual signs, Shanynthia did not exhibit abusive or violent behavior toward her children or others. The wait for trial was long and difficult, with significant delays due to multiple psychiatric evaluations of the defendant. In 2021, the final non-jury trial took place. The defense focused on Shaninthia's mental illness argument. The prosecutor acknowledged her mental condition, but argued that the defendant still had the ability to distinguish right from wrong and was aware of the illegality of her actions. Ultimately, Shelby County Criminal Court Judge James rejected the defense. In December 2021, Shanynthia Gardner was found guilty on all charges against her. In February 2022, Shanynthia, 34, appeared in court to receive her sentence, with her husband Martin present. Judge James sentenced her to life in prison for each count of murder, and 15 years for each count of child abuse and neglect. Shanynthia will only be eligible for parole after serving 51 years, including the 5 years she has already served before sentencing. She will be eligible for parole at age 80, about 46 years from now. After the hearing, the prosecutor expressed approval of the sentence, saying it satisfied Martin's desire for justice for his children. Martin also felt relieved to know that Shanynthia would no longer have the opportunity to harm any more children. An evening vigil was held at Sonia family's apartment complex to remember the victims. Sonia stood among a crowd of neighbors, relatives, and police. Attendees held red and white candles, praying for the soul of the deceased. The Baptist minister said this was the first step in healing the community, and everyone could only support the surviving child and his father through this difficult time. Martin did not attend the memorial service because he was too sad. Sonia spoke to the press on his behalf. The leadership of the Children's Hospital where Shanynthia worked also sent condolences. Martin's colleagues set up a social media page to help him arrange the funeral for his 4 children. During the service, Martin spoke about his family and children in an emotional and noble way. His words showed admirable resilience. At the end of his speech, Martin emphasized that he would always remember the happy image of his family, with Shanynthia and the children by his side. This is a precious memory that he will cherish forever. The case of Samadi Fonseca Fernandez. Samadi was born in Costa Rica in February 1975. Information about her family and childhood is limited. She grew up in the Cuban with her mother, Sonia Fonseca. From a young age, Samadi attended a local school and showed a complex personality. Samadi stood out for her beauty and knew how to take advantage of her appearance. However, due to her ambition and vanity, she put material and personal interests first, disappointing many people. She was also very jealous and aggressive when she was young. Thanks to her doll-like appearance, Samadi Fonseca worked for many years as a Barbie in a large bookstore of the Universal Company. The nickname Barbie stuck with her ever since. After graduating from high school, Samadi began a relationship with Osvaldo Fernando Belier, a successful journalist working for a local television station. Osvaldo was 16 years older than Samadi. This was Samadi's longest and most serious relationship, but Osvaldo never proposed to her. In 1996, they had a son, Christopher, and a year later, a daughter, Christina, was born. Due to scandals and jealousy, Samadi and Osvaldo divorced in 2012. In 2013, Osvaldo died at the age of 53 without leaving a will for Samadi. Not accepting this, Samadi decided to take matters into her own hands. She went to Osvaldo's old house, occupied it, and changed the locks to prevent his family and heirs from entering. In addition to seizing the property, Samadi also took some of Osvaldo's valuables. Osvaldo's family was extremely angry and immediately sued Samadi for theft. The police forced Samadi to leave the house, but no criminal proceedings were initiated against her. Samadi had several relationships, most notably with Miguel Angel Perez, with whom she had a third daughter, Maria. Some sources claim that they were married but divorced after a few years. However, other sources claim that Samadi was not married, but simply gave her youngest daughter her lover's surname without his consent. Many strange events have been discovered. Some Barbie lovers have gone missing or died under mysterious circumstances. However, this has not been noticed for a long time. For example, one of Samadi's lovers went missing after breaking up with her. To this day, this person has not been found. Many suspect Samadi's involvement, but there is no concrete evidence. Another case is Diaco, also Samadi's former lover. He was murdered after breaking up with her. The case looked like a failed robbery. The perpetrator was never caught. Again, people suspected Samadi was involved, but there was no clear evidence. The most famous victim believed to be linked to Samadi was Gerardo Cruz. Gerardo Cruz, a Costa Rican native, was born in December 1992 in San Jose. He did not know his biological father because he left the family before he was born. Gerardo's mother, Ana Patricia, later married a man named Hermes Rodriguez. Hermes adopted Gerardo and loved him as his own son. A few years later, Gerardo had a younger sister named Milena. His childhood and youth were quite peaceful. He attended a normal school, loved motorbikes, and soon found true love with a girl named Carol. At the age of 23, Gerardo, his wife and 4-year-old daughter Genesis Cruz moved to live with his aunt and uncle in the suburbs of San Sebastian. He worked at a local bakery to support his family. Gerardo and Carol was happy and were expecting a second child. In the summer of 2015, Gerardo met Samadi, a regular customer at the bakery. Samadi was 40 years old but still attractive, liked to dress provocatively and flirt with men. Notably, She started having affairs with much younger men, probably because she enjoyed the attention they received. Despite the age difference of nearly 20 years, Gerardo quickly became infatuated with this beautiful woman and began dating her secretly. She often came to the bakery, almost every day, to meet her young lover, attracting the attention of other employees. Samadi was often accompanied by his eldest daughter Christina, who was 19 at the time. Initially, Gerardo skillfully balanced his family life with his secret meetings with his mistress. Both women were unaware of each other's existence. However, Gerardo gradually became careless and began telling his friends and colleagues about Samadi, praising her as a great mistress and giving him gifts. Rumors of Gerardo's relationship soon reached his mother, who tried to convince her son to leave his mistress. However, Gerardo and Samadi's relationship only lasted a few months and ended in October 2015, when Samadi discovered that Gerardo had a pregnant wife and a young daughter. Samadi was furious and began calling and texting Gerardo's wife, Carol, insulting her and threatening to kill Gerardo if he did not stay with her. Gerardo begged his wife for forgiveness and wanted to keep the family together. He did not take Samadi's threats seriously, thinking that she would quickly cool down and find a new boyfriend. He did not expect how vengeful Samadi would become. Just a few days after the breakup with Samadi, while walking on a downtown street, Gerardo discovered an older man secretly filming up a young woman's skirt. Gerardo was angry and decided to record the incident with his phone. He then approached the woman, explained the situation and advised her to call the police. Next, he chased the man for about 2 minutes, trying to capture his face. Finally, the man fled in a taxi. That evening, Gerardo posted a video of the incident on his personal website. After just one night, the video went viral online. Netizens quickly identified the elderly man in the video as Luis Solmano Delgado, a former finance ministry official. The video quickly spread across media, turning Gerardo into a national celebrity. He was repeatedly invited to interviews in newspapers, on television, and on radio to recount the incident, condemn the former official's actions, and affirm that he had no regrets about what he had done. Meanwhile, a team of talented lawyers hired by Luis began to legally attack Gerardo. They accused him of violating the law by distributing the video and were preparing to sue him. Gerardo was surprised and confused by the situation, not knowing why he was being tried instead of the man who had committed a depraved act with an innocent girl. On October 7th, Gerardo gave his final interview on a local radio station. He was confident in his views and did not feel nervous. The next day, Gerardo planned to meet his friend Oswald after work, but canceled, citing an emergency. It was later revealed that Gerardo had received a text message from Samadi that day. In the message, she had lured him to the park that evening with the promise of another interview. Gerardo trusted his ex-girlfriend completely and did not suspect anything. After work, he went to the meeting place, but instead of meeting the journalist, he was attacked by 2 strange men. They robbed him of his bag, beat him and stabbed him several times in the chest and stomach before running away. Before losing consciousness, Gerardo called his friend to tell him the news. The friend immediately called the police and an ambulance. Thanks to timely treatment, Gerardo was taken to the hospital. Doctors tried to save his life for 42 days. During this time, Gerardo underwent many surgeries, but ultimately did not survive. On November 19th, Gerardo passed away in the intensive care unit. Since Gerardo had just become famous before the tragedy, the news of his condition attracted national attention and was not exaggerated. Gerardo's family gave interviews, asking people to pray for his recovery. They did not understand why someone would attack Gerardo. Many people attended the funeral to express their condolences to the family. People hoped that the police would soon catch the culprit and give him a fair trial. There were initially many theories about the case. One theory was that it was a robbery murder because Gerardo was attacked in the park in the evening, his bag was stolen, and he was stabbed with a knife. However, a few days before, Gerardo released a shocking video involving a famous former official, which could be related to the case. Therefore, the second theory was that it was a revenge murder. The media reported that Luis Solmano Delgado may have hired a hitman to kill the young man who had damaged his reputation. The case caused a heated debate in the press and people protested to demand the arrest of the culprit. The police began to investigate various theories and look for Gerardo's enemies. The investigation went dormant for months until May 2016, when a security camera video was discovered. The video showed two men running away from the crime scene. They immediately became prime suspects, but the police needed to identify and arrest them. The video became crucial evidence and, when released, helped move the investigation forward. The video was repeatedly shown on the news, urging viewers to look out for dangerous suspects. Police sketched the suspects and their physical features. Not long after, one suspect turned himself in and cooperated with the investigation, hoping for a reduced sentence. Thanks to his information, the investigation quickly identified other accomplices and the masterminds. All those involved were arrested, including Samadi and his daughter Cristina, the masterminds, Ronald Arce Barrientos, the taxi driver, Cesar Chavez Cerdas, who acted as an intermediary, Omar Costa, the young minor who directly participated in the attack and followed the victim. The roles and connections of the participants in the case were determined through phone calls and text messages. Samadi was the mastermind who planned the entire incident in detail and recruited his daughter Cristina to participate. They asked their friends Ronald and Cesar to find an assassin to kill Gerardo, disguising it as a robbery in the park at night. Omar also participated with the task of ensuring that the victim arrived at the right location. Samadi chose October 7th as the date of the murder. On that day, she contacted all the participants several times, assigning roles and ensuring that everyone followed the plan. The young woman also asked them to bring her some of her ex-lover's belongings as evidence after the crime. Gerardo, after finishing his shift, went straight to the park. He thought he was going to an interview, so he tried to arrive on time. However, at the meeting place, he was attacked and stabbed multiple times. The attacker took Gerardo's handbag and jacket, then gave these to the Samadi as evidence. The most important evidence against Samadi were text messages detailing the murder plan and the roles of each participant. She was so confident that she did not delete these messages. The motive for this serious crime was jealousy. She did not want to share her lover with his wife and decided that if she could not have him, no one could. She carefully planned and executed the criminal conspiracy with the help of her daughter. They were immediately arrested and denied bail due to concerns that they might flee the country. The other co-defendants were also detained before trial, except for Omar, the supervisor, and the youngest participant was handed over to the Juvenile Justice Department. The investigation lasted about a year and a half. It was not until December 2017 that the trial of all those involved in the criminal conspiracy began. Samadi has a criminal record and was once arrested for falsifying documents to receive state benefits, but was only fined. She assigned the surname of a former lover to the child without his consent. She then used the court to receive child support from this man for more than 3 years, until the fraud was discovered. Samadi was sentenced to 3 years in prison and fined a large sum. However, because she has a young child, her sentence was reduced to 5 years of suspended imprisonment. At the trial, the victim Gerardo's wife confirmed that she knew about her husband's relationship with Samadi. She also said that Samadi had threatened to kill Gerardo, but he was not too worried about these threats. The main motive for the case was Samadi's jealousy and hurt, as she could not accept that her young lover wanted to stay with his wife. Through phone records, police discovered that Samadi and her daughter Cristina had planned the crime together. After the security camera footage of the murders was released, Christina had a mental breakdown. She called her mother in tears and wanted to turn herself in, but Samadhi reassured her that the investigation would never lead to them. The verdict was announced on January 23, 2018. The court sentenced Samadhi to 30 years in prison, Christina to 25 years, Ronald to 25 years, and Caesar to 25 years. Of the killers, one was sent to a juvenile detention center, while another was still at large at the time. Omar, who had been stalking the victim, was acquitted. The victim's family received $140,000 in moral compensation. After the trial, they expressed their gratitude to the court for giving Gerardo's killers a fair sentence. Samadhi and Christina's lawyers appealed to the Court of Appeals for a reduced sentence. The appeal hearing took place in November 2019. At the same time, Ronald. According to the testimony, Ronald participated in the massacre but did not know the details of the plan. Ronald and Caesar also appealed in hopes of having their sentences reduced. As a result, each participant in the crime had their sentence reduced by 5 years. Samadhi is currently serving a 25-year sentence in a women's prison in Costa Rica. In the summer of 2020, she registered her marriage to a woman named Lindsay Diaz Lopez, whom she met in prison. At the time of the registration, Lindsay had been pardoned and released from prison, while Samadhi still had to continue serving nearly 2 more decades of her sentence. The case of Athena Strand. Athena Strand was born on May 25, 2015 in the small town of Duncan, Oklahoma, USA. Her parents divorced and her father moved to Texas while Athena still lived with her mother in Oklahoma. Despite living far apart, her father kept in touch and visited her whenever possible. Sometimes her mother would bring Athena to see her father so they could spend time together. Both her parents remarried later and Athena had 2 younger sisters. Athena was a cheerful, sociable child. She loved to play and spend a lot of time outdoors. In the winter of 2022, when Athena was 7 years old, she temporarily left Oklahoma to live with her father in Texas until the New Year holidays ended. During this time, Athena attended a local elementary school. Her father's house was located in a remote rural area, surrounded by forests and vast fields. Here, Athena had a great time exploring nature with her father and also built a good relationship with his new wife, Elizabeth. On November 30th, Athena returned home from school at around 4:15 p.m., just like every other day. She was home alone with her mother, Elizabeth, because her father and grandfather had gone hunting. That evening, Athena had an argument with Elizabeth. Athena finally felt upset and decided to go to her own room. Meanwhile, Elizabeth went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. After about 20 minutes, Elizabeth went to Athena's room to call her to dinner, but she was gone. She started searching the whole house, but couldn't find Athena anywhere. Elizabeth called a relative of her husband who lived nearby. Although Athena often visited the relatives, this time the relatives said that she was missing. Next, Elizabeth called her husband and told him about the situation. Her husband immediately asked her to contact the police and return home immediately. When she got home, Elizabeth called the 911 emergency number at around 6:40. Only 14 minutes later, the police arrived at her house. She explained the situation to the police and said that she thought Athena might have left home because of an argument between mother and child. Initially, the police seemed suspicious of Elizabeth because she had reported the child missing 40 minutes after discovering the incident. However, after listening to her description of the search around the house and contacting family members, they concluded that she might be telling the truth. The police immediately began searching the surrounding area. Although it was already dark, they still organized a search force within a radius of several kilometers around the house. They believed that the child might have gotten lost in the dark and needed urgent help. They focused on searching the entire area, including the woods and fields. Police also considered the possibility of kidnapping but found no evidence to support this theory. There was no sign of an intruder in the house and no strange noises or screams that night. Police received support from family and town residents in their efforts to find the missing Athena. The girl's mother quickly arrived at the scene after learning of her daughter's disappearance. But the results were still inconclusive as no trace of Athena was found. The search became more difficult as the area around the house was quite difficult to access, especially at night. Therefore, the police continued the search at 7 a.m. the next morning with more police officers joining in. As news of the disappearance spread, hundreds of volunteers volunteered to join the search effort. Some came on horses and ATVs, while police used drones and helicopters equipped with thermal cameras to search for Athena. By the end of the day, Athena had still not been found. Police were concerned for her safety because of the cold weather at the beginning of winter. Although Texas is a small southern state, the temperature had dropped to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Since the girl was wearing thin clothes, it would be really difficult to endure such weather. On the third day, the search continued, and the police expanded the area to search for Athena. The police became increasingly suspicious that Athena had left the house on her own. During these days, they searched for miles in all directions, but they could not find the girl. The police identified the people who were near Athena's house that night. However, Athena's house was located in a special location, far from the main road, and there were no surveillance cameras in the area. However, they quickly got some important clues. A courier service had delivered to Athena's house that evening. The police contacted the courier company and learned that the delivery to the address was entrusted to an outside contractor. They then contacted that contractor and determined that the truck had arrived at Athena's house. Each of these trucks was equipped with surveillance cameras. So the police asked for footage from November 30th. After rewinding the time the truck arrived at the house, the police saw the driver dragging a girl who looked like Athena into the car. The police quickly identified the driver as Tanner Hearer, 31, and the police went to his address. Shortly thereafter, the man was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and taken in for questioning. As soon as the police mentioned the video evidence, Tanner began to speak. He explained that he had actually delivered a package to Athena's house that evening. While backing up the truck, he heard a crash and went to check what had happened. There, he saw the girl lying on the ground and realized that he had accidentally hit her with his car. As he approached, Tanner noticed that the girl was not seriously injured. She was conscious and spoke to him calmly. The girl said her name was Athena. He started to feel scared. He decided to take her into the truck and try to figure out how to solve the problem. The girl continued to talk to him and said that she would tell her father about this, and Tanner became more and more worried. He didn't know what to do with the situation, because he knew that if she told an adult about the incident, he could get into legal trouble. According to Tanner, he could not think of a better way than to kill her. He thought the best way would be to break her neck, but he could not do it. He then strangled Athena to death with his hands. He hid Athena's body in a nearby river. Tanner gave the police the exact location where he left Athena. So the police went there and found Athena's body. The murder shocked not only her family but also thousands of people across the country. All major media outlets reported the case and many were horrified by the brutality. After the body was found, Tanner was charged with kidnapping and murder. While waiting for the medical examiner's report, the police scrutinized Tanner's identity, trying to better understand his motives. Tanner's account of the events did not seem plausible. According to Tanner, he lightly hit the girl with his heart valve, causing no serious injuries to her. However, Tanner was so depressed that he immediately decided to kill her, thinking that beating a child would cost him his job. Tanner's story seems very strange. Police found out that this man was engaged and had a 1-year-old child. In addition to delivering goods, he occasionally worked as an Uber driver. Tanner's daily life: he participated in performing in a band at several cafes in the nearby city of Fort Worth. On social media, he often posted photos with his son, snapshots during music performances, and other moments of his daily life. These images do not show that he was a cruel person. There is no information about his previous criminal record before his arrest. Police also found no indication that he might be a dangerous criminal. Meanwhile, Athena's parents filed a lawsuit against FedEx and the contracting company, accusing them of allowing Tanner to work. They called for higher standards for employee screening to prevent such crimes in the future. Police investigators said the package Tanner delivered that evening was a Christmas gift Athena's parents had ordered for her. It was a Barbie doll she had long wanted. However, when the results of the medical examination were released, the case became more complicated. Experts said Athena died within an hour of being kidnapped. Her body had suffered various degrees of injury, and the primary cause of her death was asphyxiation. Police then outlined a series of events that could have led to the incident. After an argument with her mother, Athena decided to go outside and stand in the yard. At this time, Tanner arrived to make a delivery and found her alone. According to this theory, he saw an opportunity to satisfy his lust. The area around Athena's house was quite isolated, and the police believe that Tanner may have tricked or deliberately attacked Athena to get her into the car without encountering any resistance. It is still unclear what happened next. There are two main possibilities that seem most plausible. First, Tanner may have planned to take Athena out of the house to carry out his evil intentions, but the girl started screaming or tried to escape. Fearing discovery, Tanner killed the girl and dumped her body in the river. Second, Tanner may have committed some kind of harassment against Athena that did not involve direct contact. In this case, medical experts would not find evidence of sexual assault. To learn more, police spent weeks digging into Tanner's past. They spoke to his relatives, friends, and acquaintances, looking for any signs that he might have been involved in other criminal activities. There was a major breakthrough in the investigation. The police found several people who said they had been assaulted by Tanner when they were children. However, the identities of these people have not been released to protect the investigation. One of Tanner's victims went public with her story of being assaulted by him when she was 16. She shared her story on social media in an attempt to gain attention. Surprisingly, Tanner faced no consequences for his actions and was not even considered a suspect for a long time. Sadly, the victim wrote that no one believed her during those years. However, after Tanner killed Athena, these allegations received more attention, exposing Tanner's true nature. Now Tanner will also face separate trials for 4 sexual assaults involving minors. In preparation for the trial, the government announced that they would seek the death penalty. Tanner himself has hired a lawyer to advise him to withdraw his confession and declare his innocence, but this is unlikely to help him avoid punishment, as the police have video footage from the truck as well as Tanner's testimony about the exact location of the body. We can only watch the trial unfold and wait for more details to become public.